Okay, we'd like to get started, please.
It's just nothing, or she kind of says it's kind of.
First of all, welcome to this December 11th school board work session. Thank you for joining us. First and foremost, we'd like again to congratulate our new school board members and welcome them to the board. Mrs. Miller, Ms. Fortney. Madam Superintendent, before I turn it over to you, I'd like to just do a very quick overview of what we'll be doing in the work session this afternoon for our new board members. If you'll notice on the work session agenda, there are really three parts to this: discussion items, information items, and then a board review or board agenda. The discussion items and information items for our new school board members are items that are conducted by the superintendent. These are things that she'll bring forward to us for us to review. Typically, she'll ask staff to come forward and talk to us about these items. We can ask questions, of course. We can offer comments and ideas and suggestions. The information items, those are intended to be informational in nature. However, it doesn't preclude us from asking questions about them, certainly. And then on the board agenda, there are a couple things we're going to do here. If there's a school board meeting on that particular day, as there is this evening, we'll go over the agenda for the school board meeting. I'll talk about that in just a moment. We have an opportunity to provide comments. School board members will be provided an opportunity to share their comments and thoughts about anything you'd like to talk about. We also typically will have a few agenda items on there. As a school board member, if you'd like to add an item to the agenda, contact Mrs. Worthington and she'll confer with me, and if we can possibly get it on there, we will. My preference is that you first bring it as a comment and we talk about it before it becomes an agenda item, so that we can determine as a board whether there's consensus on an item and it's something that we want to pursue further, but that's not necessary. If it's important to you and you want to add it as an agenda item, just contact Mrs. Worthington and we'll do that. If you click on the school board meeting agenda, typically we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance, our invocation, acceptance of the agenda, some special recognitions, approval of the minutes, and then there are two types of items we'll be voting on. One are the consent agenda items, and then the second items are the regular agenda items. Notice that the consent agenda items are marked with a C, the regular agenda items are marked with an R. Consent agenda items are voted on in a block. So it's one vote for all of those items. They're typically very routine items. However, if there's something on there that you would like pulled and included as a regular agenda item, all you have to do is ask, and we'll be happy to do that. We'll make that change, and that allows us for an opportunity to discuss and then vote on that item independent of the consent agenda. And I know, Ms. Fortney, you had mentioned that there was something you'd like. So when we get to that part a little later in the meeting, just mention that again and we'll pull that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
If I might add,
Absolutely.
there's sometimes confusion about regular agenda items versus consent agenda items. One of those does not have greater dignity than the other. The important thing is that an item is voted on by the school board. The effect, if you pull an item off of the consent agenda for separate discussion, the effect is that you create a regular agenda item. But from time to time, we have people ask, well, why was that a consent item instead of a regular item? A regular item is one that when they put the agenda together, they think might require additional discussion. And the consent items are things that they think might not. But please don't feel like one of those has greater dignity than the other. They do not. The important thing is that they're on the agenda and they're acted on by the school board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. And while we're talking about the agenda, I'd like to move the policy updates to the top of the agenda. Is that a problem? Are you okay with that? Because,
Absolutely.
okay, I think that Mrs. Dodge would like to get to Tallahassee, and we'd like to accommodate her if we could. So does that need to be changed on the agenda, or can we just?
No, sir, I think you just announce the change and do it that way.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Townsend?
Just a very brief question about board members creating agenda items. What's the best mechanism for that to happen? Like, say if Ms. Miller, anyone wants to put something on, is and maybe Wes can weigh in here, because we've had some confusion on that in the past. What's the best way to make that happen physically?
Well, my preference would be that it come first as a comment, so we can discuss it and talk about it, because it may be.
Comment where? Like, what do you mean?
Well,
Comment?
as a comment from you during the work session.
Oh, okay, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
okay.
if, when we have a work session, you bring it forward as an issue
Okay.
of concern. That would be my preference, because that gives us an opportunity to explore the item. We may find that we don't have a consensus to move it forward.
Okay.
But that's not necessary. If it's important to you that something be included as an agenda item, just reach out to Mrs. Worthington. She'll get in touch with me, and if we can make it happen, we'll do that.
No, I mean, I actually think that's the best way to do it. I just wasn't sure if you were saying you wanted it in a different way, like I misunderstood.
Yeah. So, you okay with that? Okay. So that's a brief overview of what, of our work session agenda and board agenda. And with that, at this time, Madam Superintendent, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, coming before you first is item number 1. Some while ago, we were trying to move our system from e-agenda to board docs, and we've been working on that for, I would say, probably the last year and a half to do that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, board docs switched hands, and it kind of delayed our process of working. There was some things trying to get things merged into our template and our format. So the ladies, Ms. Clanton and Ms. Vega, have been working with them to work through it. The board then asked that was there anybody else out there? I think that was the question, other than board docs, and if we could have a presentation. So we finally been able to get the two together. You're gonna hear from board docs today. They're not present, but I believe they're on the line. And I think Ms. Vega is gonna be doing the PowerPoint, for you. I just need one question. If Judd can come in and turn on the monitor in the back, because the board members will have to all look this way, turn. If we can have a monitor in the back on. And then we'll hear, and that will be, I believe Andrew Klein is on the line with us this morning. And after that, we'll hear from e-agenda plus. And then at the conclusion of both of those, I would just like to get some type of consensus from the board. At this point, do we continue moving forward in the direction of board docs, or do we look at e-agenda plus so that we can have a forward process of moving, and we can begin that process when we return from the holidays? So I'm going to, once he gets that screen on, so that we can see that one. Thank you, Jed. Andrew, are you on the line with us?
I am here. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Perfect. So let me share my screen.
Okay.
Here. Can you see this right here?
This one's
Gonna
coming
have to turn
up.
the lights down.
I think that one's
back
coming
there.
up.
Yeah.
It's coming. Just give us a moment, and we just got one screen that's,
Yep, no worries.
It's
Judd, can you dim the lights maybe to help back in?
It's okay. I'll just
I can't see nothing, so my
Can't
eyes is
either.
bad. Okay, we're ready.
Perfect. So you can see my screen here then.
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm logged in currently into my own, my demo site, my board doc site. You guys have it's going to look very similar over here on the left, obviously. You're all customizable. You put your logo and everything, your summary, whatever you want to put here. And then here in the meeting, this is going to be your home page or your featured tab. You would feature upcoming meetings or documents, policies, events, board goals, anything along those lines. This is my items. I'll show you what this means in a little bit. This wouldn't be seen by board members generally. This is only for those that are creating agenda items most of the time. But there's a few things that go into that I'll show you. I was asked to focus mainly on how we create an agenda and that whole process, and then how other people can submit documents to the agenda to go through a workflow or an approval process. So I'll do that. When you come into the meetings tab, you have your active meetings, and these are the meetings that are going to be, ready to be seen by the public or the board, and they would be all your meetings here. And then where you would create all of your meetings is when you click on that little caret, you would go into draft meetings. And so draft meetings, there's a few ways you could do this, but essentially you would save some draft meetings here. Maybe if your meetings look similar month over month, maybe you save one for each month. Or maybe you have a work session meeting and a regular meeting, and you would save a couple of those. The reason you would do that in drafts is because everything is easy to be duplicated, right? So if your work session meetings or your January meetings look similar year over year, or meeting over meeting, you could just duplicate a meeting. And this is the best practice. This is what we recommend everyone do. When you duplicate it, you'll be brought to this screen, and this will be your agenda, and you can see, okay, well, we don't need to discuss this Q2 plan, or maybe this budget discussion won't be here. You can click to see what you want to bring in. Maybe this whole financial report that won't be there. So you can do that. And then if it's maybe a work session and you want to duplicate that into a voting meeting, you can do duplicate attachments even. So this is really a big way to save a lot of time, because you wouldn't have to recreate any agendas. You could just duplicate previous ones. I'm not going to duplicate this one. I'll just show you what I have. But if I were to duplicate it, it would just come up here on today's date. So it would come up as December 11th, and it would say copy of a December meeting, right? If you were to create a new meeting, you would come up here into the new draft meeting. And either if you create a new draft meeting or you hit this edit button on an existing meeting, you'll be brought right to this screen where you would change the name of it. So let's just say this is a December work session. Change the name, change the date. Let's make it today's date. You can put anything here in the description. So whatever you'd like to put in here is obviously up to you. There's some different numbering, however you want this to look. And then you can make meetings completely private. So if there's anything that maybe was just internal, you could put it as private. If it was, obviously most of your meetings will be public, so you make them public meetings. You'd save that. It's then going to change the date as you see, change it to the work session, and then you would come in to view your agenda to actually create the agenda and create everything here. Now, because this is a duplicated meeting, I already have a ton of things already here. But if it was brand new, there wouldn't be anything here, and you would just come in here and create new categories, which are these bolded items that, are obviously the categories of your agenda, or new agenda item. If I were to create a new agenda item, I would just click that button, and it's always going to populate underneath my cursor, right? So if I move my cursor down to here, and I click new agenda item, it's going to populate right underneath there. So one thing to note before I go into building this agenda item is everything is drag and drop, and it renumbers for you. So it's a huge time saver. Same thing with categories, that if you were to move things around, it's going to renumber everything for you. And that generally saves a lot of time opposed to PDF or, other systems out there, is that it's a subtle little change, but everything's drag and drop. Then when I come in to edit this new agenda item that I created, there's a few, you have your agenda item details that you would edit, right? So, maybe this isn't going to be on the work session, maybe it's going to be on the regular board meeting. Or, you want to change the categories, you can do that as well. And then the subject of an item, so maybe this is a, budget report. You can make items, specific agenda items private. So if it's, say it's an executive session item. And so you could make that a private item so that the public would know that this is an executive session item, but all the content would be private. And then there's different agenda item types. So you can create, on the back end, you would have complete control over how many different types there are and what they're titled, but there's a few down here, and there's a few that will change the way it looks. If it's an action item, this is where you would have a few more items populate. When do you want to vote on it? Is there fiscal impact and how much? Is it budgeted, yes or no? Budget, where is it coming from? And then the all-important recommended action would be typed right in here. And that's only if it's an action item. Since you guys are currently Board Docs Pro subscribers, you have this ability to track your strategic plan or any board goals, strategic goals, anything like that. And this is where you would attach them. You would just be able to attach them right here. A list of your goals will pop up, right? So all your available goals, you would attach them or not attach them. But then the real big thing here is obviously creating the content. There's going to be different content levels, and this is something that's unique to Board Docs. because you're going to have most of your content's likely public, right? So this is a rich text editor. You can make charts. You can add in links or images. You know, it's similar, akin to Word. I have this here because I have a template on the back end. So every time I create an item, this template pops up. You obviously have the ability to change that and make that whatever you'd like. But you would use this rich text editor, this content area, to build the agenda item. You know, make it look how you want it to look, add all the information. And if there's any attachments, you would just put that in the public files area. And then as you scroll down, there's going to be administrative content, which would only be seen by people internal that would have a login. Same thing with their attachments. And then lastly, an executive content area that would be board members' eyes only. So where you put the content is obviously important because there's certain times where maybe there's an expulsion or there's something that, you know, only the board members need to see. You would just make sure you put that content in here, and then the rest of the content would be in public content. So I'm going to save that, and it'll pop up. I move that down to here, and then I can drag it wherever I need it to go. Is there any questions about that? You know, I kind of ran through that, but I wanted to get through it first and then ask any questions to see, you know, what their thoughts were, what the thoughts are on that whole agenda creation process, essentially.
Any questions at that point? Mr. Townsend?
Well, I mean, I guess, and maybe this is for afterward, but the people putting the agenda together, I guess
Right.
that's you, Joanne.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your preference matters somewhat in this. Have you had a chance to work on this? I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So maybe we come back and we address your take on it.
After the other one.
Okay, yeah.
I think, Andrew, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The board members do voting, and that will be a part of this. I think that's really, they will want to know that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So yeah, I can run through that. So there's a couple functionalities. Again, you guys are Board Docs Pro subscribers, and everything I just showed you would be available in LP or Pro. And let me highlight some of the Pro functionalities. So just to stick with the agenda really quickly, there's a thing called workflow, and this allows anyone that, so right now I'm logged in as what I call a super publisher or publisher. So whoever has that access is able to come in here, drag and drop. If they wanted to delete, they could delete. You know, they have that full access over creating agendas, doing all of that. You likely have other people that are submitting items to get onto the agenda, but you wouldn't want them to have full access to this whole agenda. And so that's where your Pro subscription comes in handy, because you can actually have this thing called My Agenda Items. So this could be used for any contracts that are being submitted, any field trip permission forms, or, you know, anything that's submitted by someone that's not the board clerk or the person that's generally getting it all together. And so that's this item right here, my agenda items. This would allow anyone that has a login to submit to the agenda without having that access to draft. So they wouldn't be able to come in here, but they would have my agenda items. And so I have a few things already in workflow, and I probably should have deleted these, but the reason I kept them here is to show you that if there's some things that are trying to be submitted for this January item, you can see that they're currently, this budget, there's a few budget reports that is made up, or, you know, this is a permission slip, or whatever it is, right? You can put that in here, right? If there's nothing being submitted, you wouldn't see these. Or if you were someone that's, you know, I'm a super publisher, so I'm able to see this, this wouldn't be seen by everyone. This draft section is really where you would keep templates for certain things, right? So if there's a contract or a contract submit form or something that you want to make sure that it looks the same each time, like a budget report, you would want to keep a formatted, you know, draft here. And then each time I submit it, I would just duplicate it and then go in and submit it. Or if I'm submitting a one-off item that doesn't have a draft here, that doesn't have something that, you know, is already formatted, I would come in here and just create a new agenda item. And so either way, if I duplicated it or I created a new one, it's going to look almost exactly the same as what we just did, right? You pick your meeting. Let's say it's going to go on January's meeting. It's going to be a finance discussion, and it's contract 12-102. I don't know, whatever it is. You know, whatever your contract is be titled. Again, you public or private. If it's an action item, they fill that out. You might want to attach the contract here, maybe a summary of it. However you want to fill out the content is up to you. But then the big difference here, the difference between just having that actual creation or the agenda creation on the draft area and this is that it can go through an approval process. And so there's different what we call approval trees, but it's really just an approval process. And you can set these up on the back end, or the clerk would set these up on the back end. So maybe it's just one person that needs to approve it, needs to just go right to that clerk, or whoever, needs to make sure it's formatted. But maybe every time it's a contract that needs to go through a contract approval or a budget approval, or whatever it is, you set up all of these. And if it's something like a budget approval, there might be multiple people this needs to go through. So how this would work is you'd select your tree or your approval process, you would submit it, and then again it would go into this workflow. So now we see another one, this contract in this January meeting for workflow. And what would happen is that the first person in the queue would get an email notification indicating that they need to approve an item. And then in that email would be a link to Board Docs, and when they click on it, they would be brought right into their Board Docs, and this green flag would be the first thing they see. It says, hey, your action's requested to approve this item. So if I'm a finance director, or if I'm someone that needs to approve this budget item, or whatever it may be, I can come in here, click on it, I could edit it, and you can even track your changes. So you can set up track changes so that every time it's edited, you would just make sure you would see who edited what, at what time. You could approve this item and send it to the next person. You could route it back. And then as a super publisher, again, that's my role, but whoever is the super publisher at your district wouldn't lose autonomy over any agenda item, and they could force approve an item if they know it's ready to go, or they know it's ready to go on the agenda, but maybe someone in that approval process isn't in that week, and they could force approve it and get it onto the agenda. So, again, I left this all blank, but this would be all of the content and the contract and whatever else you would need here. And then what's cool about this workflow functionality is it would show, what tree or what approval process you're in, what step, who is all approving this, like who are all the people that need to approve it. And then I think the best part is a little accountability. It shows the timestamps of who submitted what or who did what, right? So if I were to approve this, it would then show that at this time it was approved by me and routed to this person. So if Mickey hasn't approved this and it's been on his or her desk for 5 or 6 days or however long, you could say, hey, you've had it since last Tuesday at noon. Like, we need you to approve this. A little accountability there. So that's for you have this functionality now. So that's when other people are submitting, you can actually allow that to happen. So that's a pro functionality that generally saves a ton of time. Because now there might be an email, or someone might drop something off on another person's desk, or there's a ton of different ways you could submit to the agenda. This, formalizes that, and it does allow for some tracking and hopefully some streamlining of that process. Before I move on to how the voting tool works and that whole tool, are there any questions about this workflow functionality and this other aspect of the agenda creation?
No, we don't see any. You can continue, please.
It was very faint. Yeah, was there someone that asked something?
No, so you could go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So there's that as well. And then when you look at the last thing that's really important in Pro is the ability to use this meeting control panel. And that's where the board will be able to vote online. But this tool does more than just allow the board to vote online. So let me just come to this random meeting. You have a minutes editor here, and I've already worked on this a few times, so let me delete this. But you have a minutes editor here, and this is in any version of Board Docs. You have an area that you can load your agenda and do the minutes, right? In Pro, however, you would use this meeting control panel during the meeting to record notes, to take the vote, there's a few other functionalities that I'll show you, but you would do that all in the meeting control panel, and then it will pull that data into your minutes editor. So it essentially does the minutes for you. All you need to do is go through and format and make sure everything's spelled right and all that, but it will essentially do the minutes for you, and the board will be able to vote through this tool. So I'll show you how it works. You would launch this meeting control panel, or MCP, during the meeting or right before the meeting, and another tab would populate. Your agenda's over here on the left, and again, the summary and the content would be in here in the middle. Excuse me. Very similar to what it would look like, when you're viewing board docs, but the difference is that there's a few tools here that are really helpful. So you would start your meeting up here in the top right corner, or whoever's at the meeting taking the notes now would do that. And your whole board would populate, and you'd be immediately prompted to take roll. And then you could mark if someone's not present, you save that. And then as the scribe or whoever is marking everything down now, they would click through this agenda, and they would use as action comments to type up anything that's relevant, right? So if the meeting was called to order at this time, or there's something was brought to a vote, any real shorthand minutes you would type in here as you click through. When there's a voting item, you see this is an action item. When there's an action item, it's going to populate this motion tab. And this is where you get into the votes, right? So when I click on this motion tab, delete this because I've done it before, it would initially populate just like this, where the recommended action is right there in this motion area. This is a recommended action. You can go in and edit it. Then you would say, okay, who brought the motion? Who seconded the motion? And then you could take your vote. And so now there's a few ways this can be done. You can mark it unanimous, you can go through and mark individually, or you could actually do online voting. And this is where the board would actually vote through their board docs site. So when I click open online voting, if I'm a board member and I have my board docs open, I'm reading through my agenda, I would get a pop-up that just says, hey, we're voting on B2, approval of new positions. And then as each vote comes in, you would be able to vote yes, no, or abstain, or whatever your verbiage is here. And you would be able to, as the votes would come in, I'd get a check mark indicating who's voted. When I notice everyone's voted, I can close online voting, and your votes would populate. Now again, that was fictitious, so no votes were recorded. So then, just to continue with this, let me make this a little bit smaller, and I'll show you the other tool that I think is really neat through this meeting control panel. Right, so I can record everything in this little comment area. I can take my motions here, and then what else you can do is this scoreboard function, or with this scoreboard function, you can actually project this on the big screen. This is a whole other URL. It's your you can type it in anywhere. And it allows you to project the agenda and the votes in real time, right? So if I were to delete this vote and I were to start over again, it would be just a line item. And then as I picked, okay, who brought it, who seconded, and took my vote, it would show me in real time, what the recommended action is, who brought the motion, who seconded. And then if let's just say I mark unanimous and maybe Elon votes no, and save that, it's going to show again in real time how the vote happened. So this would be on another screen on the big screen of the board meeting to present the whole agenda. And as I click, and then this would be on another screen, and as I'm working through, as I click down here, it's going to follow me, right? So now it's down at a new agenda item, or this adoption of agenda, it's going to move down there. If I go to this vote, again, I think I've taken this vote earlier, but it would show the result of the vote. So this is a really neat tool during the meeting to show what's exactly where you're at in the agenda, to project the votes, and then there's also a timer function that you might have seen right away. You can have some preset timers. So if it's like a discussion item, and maybe every time there's a discussion item, you can talk for 2.5 minutes, or whatever it is. It helps time each section of the meeting. But a thing that I see this used for a lot is maybe public comment or citizen participation. You could make a custom timer, or you have a preset one, and say, okay, you only have this amount of time to talk, and then you're going to get a timer populated right here. And so you have a visual cue of how much time you have left on either a public comment or a discussion item or whatever the item may be. You have a visual cue here that, once it went to 30 seconds, or once it drops below 30 seconds, it flashes or turns yellow. And then eventually when it gets down to 0, it will go red and then eventually disappear. Are there any questions, before I kind of finish with all this, are there any questions about how this would work, or, the voting? Do you think that's something that the board would want to do virtually?
Any questions, board members?
Being,
We'll discuss it.
yeah, why don't we just discuss
Okay.
it?
If you go ahead and continue, Andrew, and then they'll discuss it afterwards.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. So just to finish up with this, right, the scoreboard, it would be shared on the big screen when you're finished with your whole meeting. You would stop your meeting. You can also do consent voting. It's very similar. It just asks if you want to affect all consent, so that's also can be done. But the big thing here is that when you're done with everything, when you come into your minutes editor, instead of just loading your agenda, you load the minutes from that meeting control panel with MCP. And now, roll call is here. Any of the notes that we took are here. All the votes are already here, right? We had Elon vote no, and it shows that. And then so all you would have to do, or whoever is doing the minutes, would just come in and go through and format it. However they want to format their minutes, you can go through and do that. But essentially, you don't have to format minutes anymore because it's all done for you. Or you only have to format minutes. You don't have to type up minutes anymore because you just have to go through and format. And then there's a spell checker. You can enable that to make sure everything's spelled properly. And then just to finalize with that, right, with the minutes itself, when they're ready to be seen by the public, you can release them. And you would just save them here. Say they're not ready, they need to be voted on. Right? You can save them here so they're going to be populated. You can go back and edit them at any time. But then, let's just say this, so we're at the May 30th meeting, that's the one we just did. Say that needs to be voted on. I'll go to a draft meeting here. Let's go to this one. I view the agenda. I think I have a minutes item here. Yep, approval of minutes. So let's just go in here. Just like there when I click action item and all that stuff would come up, when I click a minutes item, I'm able to attach previous minutes. So we had that May 30th is the one we just did. I can attach my minutes right here, and it's going to be the automatic, most recent updated minutes that there are in the site, right? So this is what we literally just edited, and they're now right here. So it's a simple click. So from the creation of the minutes from the previous board meeting, all the way to voting on the minutes, to even searching historic minutes, they would all be right here in Board Docs, and generally this is a big thing to save a ton of time for whoever is doing the minutes and whoever is looking through the minutes. And there's a few other functionalities that I want to just quickly highlight. The first one is the searchability of all this. If you've noticed, at the top of your meetings, you can search either all your draft items or all your active meetings. You can search just at the top of an agenda here. But the best part of Board Docs and its searchability is this magnifying glass here at the top. This is the ability to search your entire site. And you can choose. You can say, okay, I want to search my meetings and not my policies, but I also want to search my library items, my minutes, and you can even include attachments. Attachments will be searchable. So maybe you're looking for a lunch item, or I don't know, maybe I'm just hungry. But if this is a term that you're looking for, you can see here, okay, these are the library items, here's an attachment. If there was I can search policies too and see if anything pops up there. Yep, I think there's some policy items. So you can search your entire site this way as well. The other things that you get with Pro, one is the ability to annotate or take notes. This is not something that's available in LT, but it's the ability to just annotate documents, right? It's a great comment bubble, and when there are notes there, it comes up orange with a little ellipsis there, so you can see, oh, that's right, I wanted to bring this up. And then it timestamps it, it shows you when you took that note. So use case there is as a board member, you're clicking through the agenda, you're reading over all the content, and then you would take a note and say, oh, this is important. Or whatever your note is, you would save it, and then as the day of the meeting, you would say, oh, that's right, there's a note here, that's right, I wanted to bring this up, or whatever the note is. And to be very clear, those are private annotations for the board members to be able to, annotate their documents without anyone else being able to have access or anything like that. And then the last thing that's really big is this library section. This is the only tab that we haven't really touched on. There's the policies tab as well, but I'm not going to touch on that today. You obviously can keep all of your policies in Board Docs. The library section is where, this changes just from your agendas and your policies to everything board related. So there's 4 parts to the library section. There's a general area where it's, unlimited document storage. anything that you want to put in here, you can. Might be on your website or on a shared drive or normally shared through email. You can put it in here because then it's searchable and secure. And any of this can be public or private. So there might be certain items in the library section that's just for board members' eyes only. You can do that. And that's in the general library section. There's also an events tab where you can put maybe district events, board events. I could see workshops, an election, or an award ceremony, things like that. There's a board members page where I'm assuming that you have something like this on your website, where you can put all your board members. Maybe you have a foundation or a committee board. You can put them in there as well. And then the big thing is the strategic goals piece. And so this allows you to track your strategic plan, to track any board goals, to track any special projects that you're working on. And so what you can do here, so say you can feature some of these. So, say this goal is really important. You can put all the content here, and then maybe it's a board goal or what have you. What it does for you is that it builds a progress report. So every time this financial stability goal is discussed at a meeting, it can be tagged on an agenda item, and then you can see, okay, these are every time we've discussed this item on an agenda.
Okay. Okay.
So I won't go too deep into this because I think I've run over my time, but the big takeaway here is that if you're working on a strategic plan, you can actually tag items for every time the board is working on something so that either the board or the public could come in here and see exactly where you're at in regards to the plan or what work the board has been doing. So it kind of shows some transparency into the work that you guys are already doing. It just allows you either internally to track it or to allow the public to see it and actually have some transparency there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. At this time, see if any of the board members have any questions regarding board docs.
I think maybe this is a question for Ms. Joanne. It says one area of concern is the drop-down box used to identify agendas available to users. Was that addressed to your?
That's why I wanted him to show you how they go in and submit an item.
Okay.
And if you notice, all of theirs have the dates in front of them. And our concern is that our main users are building principals, and they are more apt to choose the first one in the line. And it may not be the right agenda, so we're trying to make it as simple for them as possible.
So that'd be something for you to work through.
Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Townsend?
I guess that, so the previous board bought this in September 2016, and it was never successfully implemented? Does that mean, or what is this implementable? Like if we, but I guess do you see what I'm saying?
Hang-ups? So it actually started back in 15, and then I'm not sure when board docs kind of switched at some point. I don't know if it was 16 or when they switched a little bit. And we started actually trying to get it implemented in 16 when I came on. And what we were doing is our template is totally different from what they have in here. So they've been working trying to make that mesh and everything. And so I know Yvette and Joanne has been working with them through different things of at this time. The last time we discussed it was one of the concerns brought by Joanne with the drop down with the building principals, because they kind of worked with them a little bit on that, and that was kind of, putting more on them, because building principals, they see that date, they're going to put it, and they're putting things in the wrong place, is what was happening. So when the board asked, was there something else out there that we need to look at, we have the agenda currently, and then the agenda contacted us with, they actually have an upgrade to their system, so we're bringing both of these forward. We still have to work through, I believe, from what I heard from the ladies last week, there's still some things that we will have to work through with board docs, getting the template, am I still correct? Okay, to where it is, going to be 100% user-friendly for the building principals, and I also want to make sure it was going to be user-friendly for the board members in itself, because you do have a part in this document as well. So, Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, so board docs is different than the e-agenda that we're currently using. E-agendas roll-up would be the Agenda Plus that we are going to be talking about in a minute.
I believe that's what
Is
you're
that
going to
correct?
see next.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am. That's correct. Ms. Fields?
What training is available for board doc, other than with Ms. Joanne and Ms. Yvette and whoever else? Is that it?
And Andrew, did you hear that question regarding training?
Yeah. So with training, there's a few options. We can come on site, and that's a part of your subscription. We can actually come on site and train everyone in person. But then on top of that, we also have unlimited virtual training. So if there's a specific person that wants to be trained, or if you want to train on a specific function, like that submitting tool, that workflow, that obviously has been something that, is of interest but hasn't been used, we can get everybody virtually trained on that as well. So however you want to do it, it's completely up to you. But our support team is really great at doing those trainings. That's generally why we have such a great high retention rate, is that we have such great implementers and trainers. So, I think Polk, you guys are definitely a unique case where, you didn't get to implement right away. But this is something that obviously we could take very seriously to make sure that it's implemented properly.
Okay, I have a couple other questions.
Ms. Fields and then back Ms. Cunningham.
What was the cost of this subscription? I don't remember.
The cost of the subscription was $9,500
$9,500, it's in the.
annual.
And my other question is to Ms. Joanne. I would think one of the advantages of this one is that the minutes are automatically created, and right now you're basically doing it yourself. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They're created in the same way as your comments that are typed in. Everything else.
So everything else mirrors the other one? Okay.
And Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, Mr. Andrew, in looking at the two systems, and we haven't heard from the other one yet, are you competitive? Right now, you're not competitive in your annual fee. Are you able to negotiate, are we able to negotiate the $9,500 down?
So that's actually a price point that is set by Florida School Board Association. So we have a partnership with them, and that's why you actually get that. That's a discounted rate for Board Docs Pro. It's normally $12,000 annually. Generally, when you look at the comparison between us and Get a Plus, I think is who you were mentioning, we have over 3,000 subscribers nationwide. We're by far the largest in terms of school districts and who we work with. And the offering itself, all the functionality, is generally more of a fit for school districts. This is why the price point is where it's at, and it is obviously higher. But we were not able to negotiate that any lower because of the set price with FSBA, and I think their price even increased recently. But you would not have to face that because you guys are locked into the current price point. So the current price if you were to move to Florida School Board Association now, the price is actually $11,600, but you guys are locked into the $9,500 price point.
For how long?
Every year you renew. That's not something, you're not going to face a price increase. That would only be on new subscribers. So if you were to leave Board Docs and then come back in a year, we would charge you the $11,600. But since you're locked into that lower price point, that's where you stand.
Thank you.
Of course.
Are
Can I ask a question? Is the $9,500 a one-time fee or an annual fee?
Annual,
Okay.
it's on there.
Okay. Mr. Townsend?
So the 10,500 back in September 2016, that was paid. I mean, that's money that's gone out, and we haven't gotten. There's been no implementation value from that, and at this point, we don't have, like, if we decided to go with it today, we couldn't say by Thursday this is up and running. Like, there's not a go live day for this. It would be an ongoing process. I mean, can I ask the
I don't
the
think
board?
there's a go live day, because they still have kinks that they were working through.
Right. I mean, who typically has responsibility for implementation in these settings? When you sell a product to a district, how does it get implemented generally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So once the contract is signed, and you guys are obviously a unique case, that being that you're already clients. But once the contract is signed, we normally schedule an on-site training within the first 6 to 8 weeks, and then virtual training happens either before that, after, ongoing, however you want it to do. But again, I was not on this side of the team before, so I don't have visibility into what had happened with Polk when you guys initially signed up with Board Docs. Absolutely a unique case. I have not seen someone. Generally, everyone that has purchased Board Docs implements within 2 months. and get us up and running within 2 months. That's generally our implementation timeline. So the responsibility, I guess, would be on, it's like a kind of a 50-50 where, we do all of we come on site, we'll do all of that work, but there has to be obviously, scheduling those dates and making sure that the time is set up properly.
Any other questions? Okay.
I have a question as
Okay.
a new board member. This was paid for in 2016. Did we pay for it in 2017? So it was a one-time, because I,
Mhm.
it's a one-time.
It's one time, like we did in 17.
And then we just
16.
haven't been able to work out
Not,
the implementation of it in
right.
2.5 years.
The ladies have been working with them right now, working on it.
Okay.
So the implementation errors are issues, are those technology issues that we're?
And I can say it actually, we started really working on it last year, trying to get it really implemented last year. Is what I can tell you on that, because they switched at some point, and I think there was a delay. I can't remember who the other company was, but there was a little bit of a delay in there, so there was a switch there, which is why I think.
On there, there was some kind of merger.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm. So there was a switch there at that point. The question, Joanne, you might wanna help with that. The question was it regarding technology? What I heard from you and Yvette, it was more trying to merge the templates to make it user-friendly with the school sites, and I'll let you speak more to that.
We found that with the current system, when we created and worked with e-agenda, we built the approver trees that he was talking about, and the way your agendas look. You can only purchase one template at that time. So that's why your work session, your board agendas, and your discipline cases, they all look the same. We just kind of rename the categories. Trying to get that moved over to the board docs and their categories, there is a formatting issue that we're having, trying to get the same information that we did. There's a lot more steps involved, and it's just creating a problem with your work session, the board agenda, the discipline cases. It's convoluted, I guess. That's the best thing I can say.
So let's hear.
Yeah, so what we'll do now is hear from e-agenda plus, and that way the board can have a full scope of what's going on. Thank you, Andrew, we really appreciate it.
Of course, obviously, and if there's any other questions or anything else, please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone on our support team.
Okay, thank you. Now, for e-agenda plus, I know they're in the room with us today. Okay.
Yes.
Is it Mustika? Say it for me. Your last name.
Thank you. My last name is Mustika.
Okay.
My first name is Nanga.
Thank
So
you.
good afternoon, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for having me here to present you the Agenda Plus. The Agenda Plus was developed from the ground up that helped you to manage the agenda in the most efficient way. So I will go straight to the demo.
So I guess,
Looks different.
we're already using board docs, so we're familiar with that. I think from my perspective, the question is, how is the board docs plus different?
We're using
e-agenda.
we're not
Excuse me,
using
I
board docs.
apologize, e-agenda plus.
Yeah.
So
How is
let
that?
me explain that to you. Actually, the e-agenda and Agenda Plus is completely different system. However, I was one of the e-agenda developers 15 years ago when I was working for ID integration. So I have a lot of knowledge in the agenda management system. So therefore, when we created our own company 5.5 years ago, we start everything from scratch using the latest and greatest technology, because we knew from our experience previously, we knew what the obstacles are. The technology wasn't up to date at the time, 15 years ago. We were developing e-agenda using .NET 1.1, and some other technologies weren't available. So today, we use .NET 4.5, we use MVC technology, which allows you to basically manage the system in a much more efficient way. I'll show you in a minute. So even from the look and feel, it looks quite differently than e-agenda. However, the functionalities in terms of a process are very similar, because you can vary so much in terms of the board meeting process, right? But we could improve some of the flow. So when you log into an Agenda Plus, the first thing you'll see is a dashboard that allows you, will tell you how many agendas are currently, or the future agendas, and also how many items are being included in the agenda. So right now we have only a few agendas that have items that have been approved. So for this demonstration, I would like just to go straight to the agenda creation, because in the past, thanks to Ms. Clayton and Ms. Vega invited me to come down here to demo in front of them and also in front of the IT team. So we have gone through the whole process of agenda creation, template creation, approval path, and some other aspect of the Agenda Plus system. So with the Agenda Plus, you can also copy agendas. So if you have similar meetings, or particularly for the regular meetings, the regular monthly meeting, you could copy where you have similar items being included in the agenda. You can do the same thing in here. But for today's discussion, we'll just create a new agenda. And when you create a new agenda, I will ask what board you want, because this system, it can be used for multiple boards or multiple committees if you like to run it that way. And then you will choose a meeting template. Choose a date. We'll use today's date. Let's say this meeting will be at 5 p.m. And we add the title of the agenda. Description is optional, and you can add a header as well in here. This is a rich text format as well. It's very similar to Word document, and you can add footer, opening remarks, closing remarks. Also, you can add a lot more optional field down here. For today, we'll just save this agenda so we can log in as board assistant, or no, as item author, so where we can add items to the agenda to be included in the meeting. And now I'll open another browser. It doesn't allow me to copy. All right, Internet Explorer is not working, so I'll keep using I'll keep using the Edge.
We were having problems with the internet too.
So now I log in as an item author. So when you log in as an item author, it will provide you with a filter here as well. A few days ago, we created the business service contract, and we put a future date for that particular agenda, and it listed at the top. So in the future, you know, when the principal or any other item authors would like to add item to that particular agenda, they won't get confused. So you can also filter based on the status of the agenda. We're not going to talk about all of these different statuses that is submitted, waiting for approval. You can also do a wildcard search on agenda item. So for now, we'll add an item for the agenda that we just created. Let's just go to new agenda. So this was the agenda we just created, and now we'll select a category. So we're gonna add, for this particular demonstration, we'll add two agenda items. One is a simple agenda item that doesn't require approval path.
Sure.
It seems like the issue here is this based on the same terminology and the same flows? And I mean, is Joanne going to recognize, like, from previous e-agenda, even if the interface is different? Are the terminologies the same and,
Yes,
and the options the
terminology
same?
is Yes.
So okay, that's
Can I ask a question also?
Yes.
It seems to me the bigger issue is formatting.
Right.
Will she be able to format similarly to what we did with the other board?
Definitely. Yes, we have demos to them. Yes.
And so
so
these seem like issues that are really more staff related.
Correct, yes.
And I would offer that, you know,
Yeah.
these are discussions that are really more appropriate for the staff.
Well, I guess there's one other. I mean, is the current agenda unsatisfactory? I mean, like, is it? Do you guys not support it anymore? What's the deal?
The current agenda was created 15 years ago, and now with the security patches on the server, the upgrades, so it's very hard to maintain. And also, it was developed using, the backend was a SQL Server 2000, and today is 2017 SQL Server. So yeah, there's some challenges in the backend.
And from
maintaining of the
a
system.
staff perspective, I think it's fair to say that it was a little difficult to work with in making changes to the agenda and so forth, as I understood it. Is that fair?
Not with the agenda.
Not for e-agenda.
Okay.
The problem is our server that we're using with our agenda is crashing, it's failing, and IT has been after us we've got to get off of it. And
I seem to
that's
recall
what
though,
it is.
when we talked about it before, there were times when we said, hey, can we make this change? And it was, and the answer was no, sorry, we can't do that with the agenda.
We were tied into
It was-
that template.
It was a little bit, and it was a little bit flex, exactly, the template,
This one has-
a little inflexible, so this one has multiple templates.
Definitely. I know you have different kind of meetings. This is like a regular monthly meeting, you have special meeting, and also you have workshops. You can create as many templates as you like. You can copy templates and modify them. So we'll speed up the process.
So I want to ask a question that's going to pertain to the board members, because their pieces are when they have to have voting items that they will be using, did that change
It's
in
improved.
there? It's improved.
It changed but improved,
I
definitely.
think that's the piece they would like to see, because that's what
Sure.
they're going to be touching more so.
Mhm.
If we can show them that piece as well, how they're going to be voting, since you're saying that's improved, that's going to be different for them. Ms. Cunningham?
Well, what I was gonna suggest, 99.9% of the time, this is gonna be utilized by staff to create agendas for board meetings and such. So I would like to suggest, and certainly finish your presentation, but that staff get together, evaluate it, and bring back a recommendation based on what would work the best, what would integrate with IT. I just feel that's really where it needs to be versus us, because we don't really, I don't enter in items to be looked at and then approval that's all in the weeds, so to speak. And so I mean, I can look at the finances, I get that, that's a quick decision, but not everything is dollars and cents. It's gotta do with the usability and the ability to tie in with what we currently have and with our computer systems. So I would like to maybe see staff, Yvette and Joanne and whoever else might use it, Susan and cross-training, whatever, get together and say, hey, after reviewing them, here's what we would like to use and here's why. Just as a thought.
Well, I mean, I think there is an underlying piece, I mean, can it be implemented? Like, I don't wanna
Right.
spend $5,000 on something we don't get anything out of.
Correct.
If previous board spent $10,500 on something we got nothing out of, that's my number one question. Will this be up in 2 weeks if once we go? Like, I mean, will this be operational? I mean, that's the question as a board member, I think that board members that we have an obligation to answer is because if it's not an implementable system, then we're just throwing money away again.
Right.
So, I
But
mean,
that would be something
are we confident that this could be
Either
implemented?
one, or, that's what I'm saying, they have to play with it a little bit to know.
So I believe the question is, how far off are we with the current implementation that we would need to make this go live?
To go live, will take about 4 weeks,
4 weeks.
yes. So
Yeah,
what happened is
2
when
months.
we, before we go live, we have to get all of the templates, will help you create all the templates, and also we have to enter the user communities, who will be using the system, and then configure the workflow also, who's going to be the approvers for the agenda items to be included in the agenda. Yes,
Probably
about
a
4
couple
weeks.
months.
And that's typical configuring
Right,
back.
yeah, for a new,
If it gets done. Like,
Correct.
what I'm saying is you have to hold the line on these things. I think one of the reasons we probably could have implemented board docs if we made people change their processes. That's what happens in implementations. You change your underlying processes so that they merge with the technology. It seems like we didn't do that there. I don't know the whole backstory. Are we gonna hold firm on making people change their processes? And that's if they have to. Like, I mean, I guess that's the question here.
So, do you wanna continue, and I'll come back with my final
I'm
point, I
open.
suggest. You're,
Would you like me to continue?
To a vote, can you show them how to do a vote?
right,
Sure,
I-
we can do that. Let me add agenda items, that's two agenda items. So for this one, I'll just go ahead and submit it. And also when you create an agenda items to be included in the agenda, I provide you with save and submit. Save will save the agenda in draft. For instance, if you're still waiting for supporting documents, this agenda item will be changed before you submit it, you just save it.
okay.
For this particular one, we will just submit it, and we'll add another item where we can include an approval path to it.
Okay.
So we'll add another one, and for the same agenda, but this time it's a different category. We'll add it to this one. And when I add that particular category, approval path is attached because this morning I added the approval path on the category level. So you can also override that during the creation. You can remove the approval path, or you can attach a different approval path. It's pretty flexible. And you can add description, and you can add recommendation, a financial impact. Perhaps for this one, let's just put 5,000, and contact person, the person who is responsible for this particular agenda item. So this time I will save it because I don't have an attachment yet. and I can go back to it. And also here, it provides you with different icons. This allows you to view that particular item. We can do that, and it gives you the detail of the item. Later on, you will see more audit trail history also, so you know what's exactly going on with that particular item, and who was making the changes, and when it was made. And now that I have the attachment, I will add an attachment to this particular item. I just have a pretty simple PDF file here.
It was not simple.
Let me avoid that. I'll go to the detail.
Is this getting you to where it shows where it can be, have an action for a vote? Is that-
Not yet.
Okay.
So I'll submit this one. I'll try it again. It's a pretty small file. All right. So I'll open that particular agenda from here to the agenda. This is the view from board assistant. I'll just submit it.
Is it our internet that's causing the problem?
Possible.
Hmm.
It takes a long time. Actually, it was a very small file.
And so there is a voting capability, so we can be sitting there, in theory, the idea is we can click a vote and it logs it as we're voting, that's what.
Yes.
And
We'll
you'll-
take attendance first, and then let's try it from here. I'll just do this one. Let's just text all. That takes in the last bit.
So, while we're trying to get that, so the main thing on this, and I know the board asked us to bring it back so that you can see, because we were gonna spend the dollars for this. And so we'll have the ladies continue to work, and if I'm what I'm hearing from the board is to look at what would really interface with our system and work with our network, so we'll be working with IT. And then bring that back to you all is what you're at, what I'm hearing. Am I hearing, is that what I'm hearing from the board? Ms. Fieldston, Ms. Rose?
I have a question. How long have you all been working on both of these? Ms. Joanne, you all have a sense of which one is gonna be more familiar than the other?
Yes, ma'am. we had Agenda Plus come and they presented to our IT department and to Yvette and myself, and we're really wanting, we think that the transfer over would be easier using Agenda Plus than it would be Board Docs, because we have been working, trying to get Board Docs fixed. We would like to go with Agenda Plus, but we wanted to show you too the difference and the behind the scenes, what we're having to do. There seems to be more steps to create an agenda in Board Docs than they do in Agenda Plus. And these were the creators of the e-agenda, so they incorporated a lot that's in there, and they know our systems, and they're gonna be able to transition it over a lot faster, whereas we're having to do the behind-the-scenes work in Board Docs.
It just seems to me like if they're gonna be the ones doing the work and they're comfortable with it, and if there's a problem with implementation, you can put a clause in the agreement saying that if it doesn't work by a certain time, then whatever. I don't see the need of coming back if that's what the consensus, Ms. Yvette, somewhere around here. If that's what they think is gonna work best for them.
Okay, Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Cunningham?
That was my comment as well, is Joanne has a wonderful poker face, but it seemed like she had an opinion, and she was making comments that she had been working with it for a while, so I don't necessarily see a reason to bring it back if they're gonna tell us the same thing in a month as they feel today.
Ms. Cunningham?
And I agree. The only question I have is you mentioned in your introduction that our current e-agenda was developed over 15 years ago.
That's correct. It was started in 2002.
Okay, but then you have spun off from that group and created your own company, you said 5 years ago.
5.5 years ago. So,
Okay.
yeah, I used to work for that company, Idea Integration, for about 9.5 years.
Yes?
And then we got sold twice. And then our company headed to a different direction, and more of doing online marketing. And then we are software developers. A couple of my colleagues got together with myself and then formed our own corporation in
So,
Jacksonville.
so you're located in Jacksonville,
Yes.
is question one. Then secondly, who else has this system? Is there a group of other school districts or other
Yes.
people that I would be interested to know who that is? I mean, are you able to, I don't know, work with Jacksonville and say, hey, I'm having an issue with this, how did you all resolve it? How many other school districts, I guess, have you serviced with this product?
Ms. Clinton has called one of our school districts that uses the system, with Clay County School. And we're in the process of deploying another one for Broward County School as well.
So you have two?
For school district, yes. And we also have a little bit different version of the software, a similar process that's being used by the City of Savannah and Metropolitan Planning Commission in Savannah.
Okay, but a little bit different.
Yes, a little bit different, but
Okay.
in terms of process, fairly similar.
Okay. So only two other school districts in our state. We would be the third.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson?
So when you broke off, did you acquire the copyrights and patents?
No, we don't have the code at all. No, they basically they discontinue supporting the e-agenda.
So they're not
They're not doing anything
doing
with the
anything
system.
with it, and they have no issue with you using it?
No, it was just an outdated system. I know what it is in it, so there's no point to retrieve or try to get in touch with them on that. So we basically recreated everything from scratch, just having the knowledge. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Gordon?
Yeah, it says, only charge initial training fees to be done on site.
Yes, we'll do the training on site. Mark Vicos will be coming down here to do the training for board assistants, the staff, and also board members.
And we pay for that?
Yes,
How much?
Yeah. How much?
it's a $3,000 fee for the training on
Endless,
site.
endless number of hours?
3 hours, not 3 hours, 3 day training normally.
$1,000 a day.
Yes.
And then what is maintenance?
The maintenance is
5,000.
normally the majority of our clients ask for we do maintenance and support fee for them of $5,000 a year. And that's including, if you need help, adding more template, for instance, particularly for the first year of the engagement of using the system. And I need help, adding more users, stuff like that. Things that you're not comfortable working with at the very beginning will help them. And other things as well.
Security patches and things of that
Security
nature.
patches also, yes.
One question.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And as a new board member, I wasn't here for the other, and if we call that a $10,000 lesson to do this, because it seems like it's, footing for Joanne and the people that have worked with it, are there, anything in the contract to protect us from, once again, not being able to implement or not being able to transfer? Is there anything that would, in that contract to protect us from being in the same situation that we're in now, where $10,000 later, we don't have a system running with the other company?
Yeah, we could put something in it, in the contract. Definitely, we can guarantee that we will be successful in implementing this.
Where's Wes? Where's Wes?
John, that
That's what I was saying.
one? Yeah. So we will add a clause in there, would it be an exit clause,
Sure.
or if it was a lack of
Make a note of
implementation?
that.
Okay.
It needs to
Alright,
make a
that's
note
in the
of that.
minutes.
It does appear to be more user-friendly, just as a
Yeah,
just a person.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just, so can I ask what your business model is? I mean, if you're giving away the license and you're doing the training for $3,000 and then there's an annual maintenance fee, is that where your money is, for lack of a better word? I mean, what's, at some point, is there gonna be an annual fee for us to pick up? What's
No.
your?
No. So the thing is, we already developed the system, and I know with our company focused on servers development, custom software development, and we developed this product at the beginning, intending to go national.
Mhm.
But we don't have the sales and marketing people, for us to help us to go broad. So that's why we already have the product. Why not just help a school district like you all?
And then you'll have a qual,
There you go.
basically, is what it
Right.
comes down to. You can go with here.
Yeah. In the hope also, if you could help spread the word to I know you have meetings, your annual meetings with your counterparts from other districts, that will be really appreciated.
So, I have two words,
Go ahead.
Shark Tank.
Actually, Clay County School was the very first one using our system. That was in 2016, May of 2016, and we were live in June of 2016.
Yeah, no, and I understand, you need clients to build, right?
To build.
Yes. Yes, we need time to go. And I also have a written testimonial from 3 of our clients who's been using the system for about from 2.5 to 2 years. I printed out with me.
Go ahead, Ms. Cunningham.
Mr. Bridges, we had some conversation regarding putting a clause if we should go with this company in the contract to be able to put like a time frame on implementation, so this doesn't mirror the last attempt.
I'm sure that
So,
we can,
If you would be so kind, if staff decides to go in that
sure,
direction,
I'm
if you'd
I'm
be
sure
so
that we
kind,
can create,
review it and make certain that by March 1 or put a date on it, that we can move forward.
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Townsend.
One last thing about that. I'm pretty sure it's not the technology's fault that we couldn't implement board docs. We didn't want to change our process flows and to conform to their technology. I don't know what clause we're gonna put in a contract that's gonna say if you don't wanna change your underlying way of working to conform to the technology, that the technology's to blame.
No, I'm just saying, put a date on it, that it has to
But-
be implemented.
But that's gonna depend on us, is what I'm saying. I mean, like, I'm fine, but
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But I want people, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I don't think I am. We could have implemented board docs if we made everybody do it, board docs
Maybe-
way,
maybe
I
sure.
don't think,
I got
so
it.
that's a problem.
Mr. Wilson.
Well, and if I'm hearing this correctly, the product we're currently using isn't supported anymore, so
Correct.
we're
Yeah,
gonna have to.
we have to
We
do
have
that,
to.
do
have to
it.
go
Right,
into
right,
something,
right,
so,
right, so, I know, which is why,
yeah, so we, I mean, we could put something in the clause that has some sort of financial damages, but they can't be too significant because we're not paying a lot.
Right, it's kind of superfluous,
It's-
really.
Yeah, exactly, so we need something, we need
Yeah,
something to
sure.
move forward.
So,
Ms.
Mayor?
Courtney?
so are you talking about the, server that are you talking about our IT server? What exactly were you?
But I'm not in the daily implementation, but the way implementations work, you have a technology over the top, you have processes that flow up to them. It sounds like from what I've heard, because board docs had different workflows and had different terminologies, that we didn't want to force our people out in the field to change their way of working in a significant way. And because of that, we went back and forth. That's not a technology problem. We're not gonna win that in court. We're not gonna go, hey, we didn't wanna change how we do our business, so you pay for that. And I think it's kind of the same thing here. I mean, I think there's probably a unfortunate story in how we bought this in the first place. That's my point. I think, all things considered, Agenda Plus seems to be the better of the two options, given the user friendliness of it for us. But I think when you look and see whole bunches of other districts were able to implement it and we weren't, I'm inferring some unwillingness to change how we want it to work, to conform to it. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, please. Somebody correct me.
Well, one of the things I will say is with board docs, it would be a total different change.
Right, I
to
got
what we
you.
had,
I got
totally
you.
different.
I got you.
So all the contracts that the principals, that would not be entered that way
No, I got
at
you.
all.
Right.
So it was changing the entire thing is what they were doing and, taking it back through and all those would be moved off.
Right.
So, and it was trying to work through how do we bring that about, change it to where we educate everybody on the system? Because once you push a button and it's active and nobody knows how to input things and how to read it, you know, it was.
Right, no, I don't disagree with you, but it's not the technology's fault. Like, that's why I'm like, if
I think it was a
we.
combination.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
it was a
because Ms.
combination.
Clinton said
Yeah.
that the server was
She
dying,
did.
right?
But
And
But that's
if-
not on
our
board
server.
docs.
If I
That's
just
what I'm
add
saying.
something,
It's a
I'm
combination.
sorry, it's all right.
It's Mr. Wilson.
There, some of it could be technology related. I mean, when you have to start making those, there could be some programming changes required when you start talking about changing the configuration. So some of it could be technology related. But in any case, we need something to move forward with, so.
And when did we know, like, from 2016 to 2018, when did we know this wasn't working? Was it over that long period of time?
When do we know that?
Like, this was gonna be an issue? Do you know what I mean? Like, that she was having such difficulty with it, or whoever was inputting.
I would say we've been working about a year, really trying to get the trees, the reporting trees, right,
Right.
the approval trees, trying to get everything merged over, the different things. We've really been working with it for about a year. And like I said, when they switched, that kind of gave us a delay,
Okay.
on their end, because we had to wait until a new person came on board with them, and then if they were changing things at that point too.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Reynolds?
I was just gonna ask, as far as what we currently have on e-agendas, we can go back years to look at
Mhm.
the old agendas. Is that something that
The agenda
we'll
plus.
transfer to Agenda Plus? We'll just have all of these documents in PDF somewhere?
We can do it both ways. We can also integrate your current system. You've been using it for about 12 years or so.
Mhm.
So you have a lot of information there as well, right? So we know, how the e-agenda works, and we know exactly how to manipulate the data to move it up to our system as well. The only thing that you will be able to do is you'll be able to search for agenda items
Mhm.
throughout the years in the database. The first thing we'll do is we'll upgrade the SQL Server database from 2000 to 2012, and after that we'll upgrade it to 2014, and then to 2017. We have to follow that step in order for us to integrate with your current system. I don't think anybody else here, our competitors or vendors will be able to do that. But we know how the system works, and we have done it for other clients as well.
Okay.
I just wanna make sure we weren't gonna lose the
No,
past
you
12 years
will
of
not lose
agendas.
that. You will have backup of the old e-agenda also in case something goes
Okay.
wrong, right? You have it in your server.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Because the board did ask us to bring forward, thank you for all the questions, and we'll make sure that we take note of that. And we, from what I'm hearing, once the selection is made, there's no need to really bring it back, but we will inform the board which direction and how they're working through everything, after working with, I'm gonna need to make sure we work with IT very closely and make sure everything can flow. Thank you.
All right, should I continue with this? So you still want to see the,
I think-
I think we're
the
good.
I
voting?
think,
We're good.
I think we're good. We're gonna just
Okay.
have you come back and work with, the assistants in the IT division,
Okay,
okay?
all right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
We probably need a short break.
If we can have like a 10 minutes, is that good? Okay, 10-minute break. Thank you.
Ready?
I'm ready. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and begin. I know we're a little bit behind time, and so our next agenda item that you have before you is proposed changes to transportation and charter contract. Before they start, I want to remind the board that if you remember earlier in the year, we had the drivers that came and they had some concerns. So we have held meetings. I held a meeting with with a group of drivers and area managers. Von Belcher and Rob Davis have been holding meetings with them to find out what are the concerns, how can we make it better for them, and what some of their suggestions that they have. So what you're gonna hear is coming, information that came out of those meetings and after they research what they proposed to them. So I wanna now turn it over to Rob Davis and Von Belcher, and when John Hill comes back, and he's been working with them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd, and thank you for this opportunity to discuss the elimination of charter school transportation by the school district. At one point, the school district provided transportation for just about all the charter schools. And over the years, as charter schools increased and resources in the district decreased, we had to put charter schools on notice that they had to provide their own transportation. And currently we're in that situation again. So, you know, most of those charter schools that did start their own transportation have been very successful and provide a great service to their students. The district did keep the smaller charter schools, but we're at the point now where with the lack of resources, the lack of drivers, that we need to do something to remedy that. And that's coming very loud and clear from our area managers and our school bus drivers. So, you know, prior to every school year, we review and discuss ways we can improve the district service to the school transportation services to our district schools. And so one of those is by eliminating some services that aren't required by the school district. Also, due to the shortage of drivers, we're having a difficult time getting students to school on time. And when we do that, they're missing instruction time. And so by eliminating some of these services, we feel that we can get the students there in time for breakfast and in the seats, so they're maximizing their instructional time. Just to give you some statistics, the 31 charter schools that receive transportation, 21 provide their own transportation services for 7,000 students. The district transports 350 students at 12 different charter school sites. And we utilize 90 buses. Now, understand those 90 buses are transporting district school students as well during the same period of time, but the reason that's important is to show how widespread charter school students are, and it takes 90 buses to get them into the locations that they need to be. We are currently 28 driver positions short, which is about 5.5% of the total driver population. We've come a long ways. We were close to 70 at the start of the school year, so we've been chipping away at that very heavily. Florida statute covers the charter schools in 1002.33. You know, based on the information that I obtained in the statute, there are services that the district has to provide or the sponsor has to provide, and charter school transportation for charter school is not one of those services that they have to provide. Now, what they do have to do is we have to make sure that we are in cooperation with the charter school so that a barrier to transportation is not created. And I can say that we have done that in every case when a charter school had transitioned into transporting their own students. To give you some examples of what we can do for the charter schools that we are currently providing transportation for. Sorry, these pages are sticking together. The district currently has 64 surplus school buses that, when parked, were operational. They are running. And so a charter school has the opportunity that if a district marks anything as surplus, they have the opportunity to take that equipment. And so those are marked surplus. We would normally sell those on govdeals.com or another site and receive anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 per bus. So those actually could be given to those charter schools to help get them started with those. We also had 24 other buses that had some type of mechanical issue. We could look at what those mechanical issues were and then see if it's in the best interest to repair those and get them back on the road. Understanding these buses are older, because we're not parking 10-year-old buses, we're parking 15-year-old buses. But understanding these buses are older, they do meet Florida specs, and the district would do the initial school bus inspection to make sure that bus is road worthy to transport students to and from school. We can also contact our local bus vendors, the charter schools, the options of whether they can buy, lease, and new or used school buses. You know, based on those topics that I just mentioned, we feel strongly that that would prevent any type of barrier and give equal access to all students residing within a reasonable distance of the charter school as defined in the charter. So by helping them get started, that would not be a barrier for them. During this process, we also surveyed other districts. The majority of the districts we surveyed do not provide charter transportation. There were some cases where they were district-owned charter or district-operated charter, and they provided transportation for that, and then there was a collegiate program that they provided transportation for. Some possible savings that we could generate could be anywhere around $130,000. That is strictly eliminating 4 buses and 4 driver positions. But something that we can't put a cost on is the service that we would enhance and increase at the district schools by not serving 12 other charter schools, by reallocating those services to district schools and making sure that the students that we're charged to educate are on school, are in class on time, getting educated, instead of having continuous late buses. Now, when I say continuous, are they every single day at every single school? No, but there's enough that it is an issue that we have to address. Equity. The district, I feel the district needs to offer the, services, equally to the other charter schools. And so by providing some charter schools with and some charter schools without, we need to make the decision to, treat each charter school the same and allow them to go into the transportation, with our assistance. The other charter schools, like I said before, were very successful. And I think the charter schools that we do have, that we are transporting, could be successful as well. There are charter school programs such as McKeel, Lake Wells Charter School, that could absorb some of these schools and receive the FTE funding that we currently receive. So I think looking at it at a broad picture and working with charter schools that are currently doing the transportation, we could help these other charter schools get off the ground. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Belcher to give you some other reasons why this would make sense for the district.
Good afternoon. Along with what Mr. Davis mentioned about removing charter school transportation, with the addition of Citrus Ridge Academy and additional magnet schools just this past year, along with a larger number of magnet students that we're transporting, eliminating charter school transportation will help us provide better service for our students that we are required to transport. It will free up buses for use in transporting students in higher populated areas, especially on the east side of the county where there's been a higher population growth. Since the 2013-2014 year, we've had an increase in transportation of approximately 1,100 students. On the east side, we feel that removing charter school transportation in that area will free up some of those buses to accommodate that increase. It will also help reduce the time and mileage on many of our bus routes. In some cases, 20 to 30 minutes and possibly 10 to 15 miles on some routes. We currently have routes that start prior to 5 a.m. and some that end after 6 p.m. So we're hoping that that will help in that aspect to maybe get students home a little quicker. We're hoping that it will help reduce late bus arrivals. That's been a major issue for our students and staff. That's a major issue there that we want to help with. It will reduce student numbers on our buses, which will help reduce discipline issues. Many of our buses have students sitting 3 to a seat, and especially with some of our longer magnet and charter routes, when they're sitting 3 to a seat, there are some discipline issues that come with that. But that is one issue that hopefully would help with. Removing charter school transportation will reduce the number of schools that are supported, allowing our area managers to concentrate on providing on-time and more efficient transportation for our schools. And as stated previously, it may also allow us to reduce the number of school bus positions for cost savings, or it may reduce the number of bus driver positions that we may need in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Now transitioning into the elimination of some under 2 mile transportation. And, Florida Administrative Code 6A-3 basically outlines who is eligible for transportation and who isn't. And in a nutshell, students that live more than 2 miles away from their assigned school are eligible for transportation. Or students with pre-K students with disabilities and other students with IEPs are eligible for that transportation as well. Students living less than that and not having any of those other criteria do not receive or not eligible for that transportation services. We have in the past provided those services. We call it space available transportation, meaning that we have available seats on the school buses and that we can add a student as long as they get to a stop outside of the 2 miles. We also have a courtesy, what we call a courtesy transportation, where we provide transportation for teachers that may go into a high school and then their students or their children are transported from that high school to their zone school. But that zone school is outside of the 2 miles, and in the afternoon, they would go home to that school, so we could claim FTE for those students. So our objective in removing the ineligible students is to improve efficiency for on-time performance. This means that students would be more likely to arrive at school on time. It would improve relations between the department and schools by providing better level of service to our students entitled to transportation and their parents. You know, we understand, Polk County Public Schools understand that students who are ineligible for transportation face circumstances that bus students don't. So to help alleviate those circumstances, the school board would work closely with all city, county, and state agencies by cooperating to identify potential unsafe pedestrian situations. The various agencies, with the various agencies to try to correct these situations in a timely manner. They can help provide the construction of sidewalks, furnishing crossing guards, establishing student crosswalks, and increasing law enforcement diligence to enhance the safety of students who may use pedestrian routes to and from school each day. There is also a corporation or a program called Safe Routes to School. And Safe Routes to School has a ton of literature that shows, you know, different agencies you can work with to make sure that students that are walking are getting there safely. There's also the walking school bus that you can implement with parents, and parents to actually take turns and say, okay, I'll take this group this week, you can take the group next week, kind of like carpooling except walking. And it's considered the walking school bus. And I think by collaborating with parents and government agencies, the school board will continue to promote increased safety for all students. Some statistics on the under 2 mile is we currently have 3,400 students that we are transporting who live under 2 miles and we do not receive funding for. 171 are high school students, 615 are middle school students. The largest population is the elementary students, which is 2,574 based on October's count. We would recommend, we have slotted that 406 students would no longer receive transportation for the 2019-20 school year at the elementary level. And the reason those are slotted to not receive that service is because they have been heavily vetted through our safety department. So meaning our safety department has gone to those sites, evaluated them. There have been sidewalks that may have been added, and I'll use Wendell Watson as an example. Wendell Watson had a large portion of sidewalks poured so that students living in the neighborhood could utilize those sidewalks and walk to school. However, we're still transporting those students from neighborhoods within 2 miles. So those are the type of students and the type of areas that we are looking at. We would continue to look at the other 20 students or more to make sure that before we remove any service that they are vetted, that we are making sure that they're not crossing a major thoroughfare. And the last thing we want is to put an elementary child in danger. So, yes, ma'am.
So what is you said 406 elementary, so what is the total charter school and or within 2 mile?
Yes, ma'am, I'll get.
Are you getting there? Okay,
yes,
sorry.
So, no, it's a good question, because, secondary education does not follow under hazardous walking criteria whatsoever. So we would eliminate secondary, which that total number between secondary and primary elementary students is 1,192 students with 350 charter school students.
Included in that or in addition to that?
In addition to that number.
350?
Yes, ma'am.
And how many total again? How many total?
1,192.
1,192, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So middle and high school.
And then the,
Just a general thing, I mean, can we get some of this reduced to a one-pager or something like that at some point where we have the numbers that we can look at? It's kind of hard to process
Yes.
things just verbally, so, I mean, after you're done.
we can do that. We can do some bullet points.
Like a fact sheet.
Yes, that would be helpful.
Yes.
The 1,192 kids, that would include all the teachers' kids that are,
No, ma'am.
No.
no, okay.
One of the things that we would continue to look at is.
These are just the under 2 mile.
Courtesy, right, yes. ma'am.
Okay, gotcha.
The courtesy transportation that we provide some of our teachers throughout the county. And I can tell you that has been, they would have to leave school early or arrive to school late. And I think that service is, is very productive for the district.
Just check.
The Florida statutes that cover all this is 1006.21. Hazardous walking is 1006.23. We can provide all this in a bulleted point, Mr. Townsend. And there is a possible savings there as well, around $200,000 if we were able to eliminate 6 buses and drivers. Now, and again, you can't put a cost on the service that we could increase by removing close to 2,100 students, or however many students. 1,500 students. 1,500 students. Currently being transported, and focus on those students that are eligible for transportation, and get the students to school on time and home in a decent hour. Yes.
Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Miller.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Are you still going, or are you done? I just didn't wanna ask a question you're gonna answer in 30 seconds.
He's got one more portion, but I'm done.
Do you wanna go first?
You can go ahead.
Okay, I just, of the 406 students that are elementary, what type of I mean, is that they live across the street from the school, or are some of them actually 1.9 miles that there's a long way to walk for a
The
5-year-old?
1.9 miles, and by statute, they don't qualify
Right.
for transportation. We've looked at those very, very heavily, and so those are some of the space available courtesy rides that don't provide any other additional resources, other than it affecting our average bus occupancy through the funding process, that we could possibly put them on a bus if a seat was available, if they live 1.9 miles and could get to a stop outside of the 2 miles. The students that we are talking about are students that live well within that 2 miles. That actually can see the school from their residence, and often play near the school on the weekends. So.
Okay, that was really my question is, are they across the street from the school, or are they, I don't necessarily wanna see a 5 or 6 year old walking 2 miles
Right.
to school and 2 miles home every day. Seems insane, even if statute doesn't think so.
I understand that.
Okay.
Ms. Miller?
And this is kind of two-part, I probably have multiple questions. This is 2 factions, we're talking about charter and the 2 mile radius kind of under one umbrella. In that fact sheet you give us, can you give us the schools we're not gonna serve, the charter?
Yes, ma'am, I have a list of those. I didn't read it out because I don't wanna run over the timeframe.
And I have a question about that. We do receive FTE, I know we do for one of the charters. Victory Ridge, which houses children with developmental disabilities, we receive their FTE dollars for that. I don't know if we make a profit on that, if that's a break even, or if we're losing dollars, FTE transportation. And I don't want this to turn into losing bus services because of liability issues.
No,
So,
I agree with that.
Well, these buses that you're talking about are available. Number one, is Victory Ridge included in that, which I'm sure they are because they're a charter. And the buses that are available, is that gonna be something offered to all of these 12 schools, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Then it's gonna have to be a board decision if they're gonna be donated or sold at a reduced rate or
Actually,
whatever.
the statute allows,
That's
they're already,
what
the board has already voted for those buses to be surplus.
Okay.
And so, it wouldn't take a board action.
Have you had conversation with Victory Ridge about this?
I haven't had a conversation with anyone until we had this conversation.
Okay, because I mean, just for transporting medically fragile kids is a different scenario, so I wanna make sure that they feel comfortable, because when we had the accident last year, they had the accident in our bus. The first, community input was, you're gonna take our transportation.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that those children are still, they transport a long distance. So I just, as a board member who represents that population, no matter what school they're attending, I wanna make sure that that's a smooth transition, based on the need of that school. And so that's a different scenario other than the under 2 mile. I live near the Wendell Watson area, so I've seen the sidewalks being poured on those heavy curves, so I can hear the phones ringing already about the walking. And in the past, sitting in school board meetings, we've had parents come up, with concerns, you know, at the end of the meetings, based on, we talked about this before with removing transportation. When you name these programs like the walking school bus or these other government agencies, are we gonna appoint, is that gonna be the school's responsibility? Who are we gonna appoint to suggest, or is that just a suggestion we're making for parents who have no idea that exists?
Well, actually, we've had discussions, the superintendent, brought up a great idea when we first started these discussions, is we're, to make this a countywide
Initiative?
initiative.
Okay.
So we're talking about sheriff's departments, we're talking about local law enforcement, we're talking about, you know, school board employees, even maybe school board members. We wanna make sure that we have all the stakeholders at the table when, so that they understand and can communicate to the public why this transportation services are being taken away.
And then we have a point person for those phone calls. At the last board meeting, I remember people even bringing lists of sexual offenders in the area that within 2 miles of their school, and their children having to walk by those houses or those, you know, communities. So there'll be some kind of response team based on these agencies you're gonna partner with
Yes,
for
ma'am.
that.
And there's, the statute's clear on a sexual offender or a sexual predator. Now, to a parent, it doesn't matter.
Right.
A sexual offender, they feel, you know, their child shouldn't be walking past a sexual offender's home. A sexual offender could be in several different, but when it's a sexual predator, that's when the
That's the
district
statute.
has to make arrangements for transportation based on, or to make sure that that child is not walking within and with anywhere near that home. And I can tell you, we provide information, bus stop information to our sheriff's department every year, and when they're placing those sexual offenders and especially the sexual predators, they're not putting anywhere near a bus stop.
That's just from an experience as a community member sitting in a board meeting where that was an issue at one time. So, those are the 2 areas, as long as, the charter schools will be contacted and given the information on the possible, bus sales, because I don't know what charter, I'm presuming these are the small charter schools, because the larger ones have transportation, making it available to them, so they don't feel like we're just dropping them for whatever reason, that's a.
And that's why, and, you know, that's why the superintendent wanted us to have this meeting now, so that we can start making those, communications and reaching out, so, we don't catch anyone off guard and pull the rug out from anyone. That's the last thing we wanna do. We wanna work with the charter schools. We wanna help the transition, in a positive manner. And we wanna work with the other charter schools that are providing transportation and give them opportunities to maybe pick up the transportation, which they could pick up FTE funding for, so.
Mr. Townsend, then right, Mr. Wilson.
Sort of along the lines of the other government organizations, you know, Interest Connection, Poltran, has very creative leadership. I know they're actually, I think, eager to help to the degree that they can. Don't know what is possible, but they seem to think there were some things that were possible, like making their first runs of the day school runs. Like their leadership knows the rules, and I hope that we're in contact with them regularly. I mean, and maybe we could pilot a program like I know in Lakeland, for for instance, the Parker Street neighborhood, last time I checked, it's zoned for Lime Street, or for Philip O'Brien.
Right.
And it's 1.8 miles away, and you're walking through a tricky area where there's not much light. That'd be a great place for like a pilot. We don't have to comprehensively, and I think there's a place in Winter Haven similar to that as well. I hope we're exploring those types of possibilities, and I know they'd be interested in doing that, so if we can facilitate that, would appreciate that.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Well, and I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm not adversarial to charter schools, but it occurs to me that what we're offering is that they should start transporting their students, and we're offering a bus to do that at no cost. They'll be responsible for finding someone to drive that bus, and to, if they need pairs on the bus and things like that, picking up that cost, which we're now picking up. It just seems only fair and reasonable for us to pass that cost on to them, which is a part of doing business, it seems. So I would hope that those charter schools would be responsible enough to manage that process. And I agree with Mr. Townsend. I think there's some other creative solutions available to us out there, but I would hope they would, and there could be some smaller ones that simply can't, but generally, it seems to me, if I were starting a charter school, that would be something that I would think would be necessary to consider.
In the charter school, I think it was Learning and Literacy.
Language and literacy.
They actually took us up and got one of our surplus buses and started their transportation services with that.
Ms. Cunningham?
And the other thing, I agree with what everybody else has said, and in addition to that, I noticed that we're looking at doing this at the beginning of next school year. It's not like we're saying January 1 or March.
No.
And I know whenever we do these types of transitions, I can remember when we did the food service thing a few years back, and it's difficult for them to kind of get rolling. So I'm hoping this will give them enough time, but certainly if not, I would simply want to request that, I don't know what time frame is reasonable, because that's not what I do for a living every day. But if for some reason they couldn't get it together in 9 months, which I think is plenty of time, but it may not be, I don't know, that we would continue to work with them until such time as they would be able to ramp up with their own system. That's the only thing I would say.
And we have a letter that's why we wanted to give it to them early enough so that
Yes.
they have time to do
Enough
that.
time.
I think really technically they said 30 days, but I want to make sure they had enough time
Plenty.
and we're willing to do have them
Yes.
have the bus as well. So I
Thank
saw
you.
a hand here and a hand, I don't know. That's somebody?
I
No?
think
Okay, Ms. Fields.
I think it was Fields' first time.
Okay, sorry.
I'm concerned about the less than 2 miles. Example being Rock Ridge Road, we've had discussion about that before, and I wanna know, in a situation like that, when the parents and the students feel like it's not safe for them to walk that long distance, are we going to look at that as a case-by-case basis, or what are we thinking on that?
Yes, ma'am. And like I said, we have over 2,500 elementary students that are not eligible for transportation and do not meet hazardous walking. But we're only taking 406 students that we've done a lot of research on. So yes, we'll take every one of those in a case-by-case basis.
And not just necessarily elementary, but middle and high school, if it's not a safe
Right.
environment. And I think that's gonna be one of the things that we really need to make sure that we explain thoroughly.
And Ms. Phil, that's why we wanted to form the committee with not just, school board employees and members. We wanted to go outside and get, planning, people from the cities, and then include the sheriff's office too, so that we can have that conversation of what are the areas and, what is hazardous in some aspects to them. It may not point out just by us looking at our definition of it.
Right.
So we can include them all in there. And looking at Citrus Connection, we'll put them on there so that we can hopefully, as a community come together and provide different options.
Because the Polk Transit Authority and the Citrus Connection and Winter Haven Area Transit, all of those working together may be able to solve some of these issues.
Mr. Townsend?
It's sort of along those lines. we've got some lead time on this. The charter thing makes sense. You know, I think given the reality of the bigger issue is, you know, we're 1,190 kids who, on the 2 mile issue, which has been vexing for a long time. I'm sure we all get those calls. Could we? It's first of all, it's one of those issues where we really need to be talking to the public about it as a challenge. Not we're going to stop doing this for you. It's we have these constraints based on the realities in state law, the realities of funding, the difficulties of hiring people. These are the constraints we face. Here are the responses we're going to make to that. Here are some alternative creative things we're trying to do, and this is why I keep coming back to the public transit thing. If we could demonstrate, set a goal to have one pilot program in place by the beginning of next school year, so we can demonstrate this is the creative thing we're doing, not just to take stuff away, but to create new stuff, and shows the public that we're thinking ahead, we're engaging people, and maybe that can't happen, but if we can make a determination on if something's possible before that, I think that would be very helpful. But the first notification of this that people are going to get is a letter that's very legal sounding. Doesn't even say I'm sorry. It probably should say we're really sorry about this, but we have to flip that conversation around so that people understand why we're doing things and what we're doing to make it less bureaucratic and capricious feeling. If that makes sense.
Mr. Wilson.
And I've shared my thoughts about the charter issue. I also want to echo the thoughts of my colleagues about the 2 mile issue as well. I think especially as it relates to elementary school children, that's a long way for kids to walk. And there are a lot of perils along the way. So I'm in agreement with that. I would like, since we have the press here, I would like to reiterate that over the past decade or so, we've lost roughly $30 million in PICO funding from the state, $50 million in rollbacks and millage rates, and over a little bit longer period of time than that, over $30 million a year in lottery funds. So $110 million a year. At some point in time, I think the state's got to realize that it's going to have to come to the conclusion that education is important to our society and to our state, and they're going to have to step up to the plate. These are challenges we face because of financial issues that we have. So I think we have to keep sending that message to our state legislators as well.
And Mr. Wilson, a good point there too is in transportation funding from the state, that has not increased significantly since 1998. The transportation funding is not increasing with inflation. It's not increasing with fuel prices. It's simply, it may be a few dollars here and a few dollars there, but it drops up and down. So,
and we could serve a lot of students and a lot of needs with $110 million a year, right?
That would be helpful to see on I'm sure you've got a graphic somewhere of that. It's probably in the budget. I don't remember seeing it, but if you could break that out to transportation, that would be helpful.
Ms. Reynolds?
I know this is a sample letter and you talked a little bit about that, but if we could, when we send this out, include in that letter, these are some of the options that you have, and not just these are the options, but also this is the phone number for it, or this is the website to find out more information on a walking school bus or those types of things, because I think that will help with them all calling the district and somebody answering and saying, I don't really know where to direct you, but just to kind of give them direction of this is where you need to go, this is where you need to call for questions, so that.
I'm glad you brought it up because we actually met with Hillsborough County, who went through this last year with the under 2 mile students, and they gave us sound ideas, and working with Ms. Pleasant and her team, and creating some informational links, as well as forms that say, please check out this area that's under 2 miles, before any services are taken away, so I agree, we need to educate the public as much as possible and provide all those resources.
And for that under 2 mile radius, I just, along the lines of what Mrs. Reynolds said, I just don't wanna leave it up to the sites to decide to get involved in those programs, because then you're gonna have the frustrated parents waiting on approval from their school principal or whomever. Like, if it's gonna be an initiative from the district, it needs to be, you know, a contact for them at their school that will have this information, and it's not really an optional kind of thing. Because if it's a city program that we're just gonna suggest, and we have to get each school to buy into it on their own individually, it needs to be succinct across the district. We will be providing this is an initiative, this is a pilot program, not really leaving it up to just, you know, others to decide, because we're gonna get, you know, different responses.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
I thought we were gonna hear about the bus drivers and the meetings and stuff. In what?
No, we met with them, these are,
Oh, I
they
thought
gave
we were getting
suggestions.
Oh, that was their suggestion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
ma'am.
meet them
That
with
was-
them.
Pretty good.
And actually, one section of that Mr. Belcher was going to discuss, I know we're the time constraint.
One quick last thing to add to
Send it to them.
this discussion is, and I know this is particularly an issue in like Wales, and hopefully it'll be part of our ongoing discussions, but when a kid who ought to be in Lake Wales High or is bused a long way away, I think there are probably other situations like that elsewhere in town, and I think those would be good things to look at as well from our side, and I don't know if there's a way to, I know they're more than 2 miles away, so we're required to, I don't know if there's any kind of agreement to be studied there, so just want to throw that in there as well.
Yes, and that's something that, the opt-out programs from Lake Wales, where if you live in one section of the town, you go to Winter Haven. If you live in another section of the town, you go to Frostproof. If you live in another section of the town, you go to Bartow. Those create some logistical opportunities, to say the least. And then opportunities on top of that, which I know that some of that you can't control, but if you're a kindergartner and you go into a school that, and then the school that you're zoned for makes the grades and they're back on track and maybe an A school, that student is eligible to stay in there for the entire grade levels that it has.
So I'd just be curious what our options, if any, are on restricting that kind of travel. So.
Mr. Wilson?
And just very quickly, I understand that our state legislators want to provide for school choice. It sounds like a good thing, it sounds like a good idea, and I have no problem with that. But I think a far less costly option and more practical option is simply to put money into our local community schools so that they're good schools, and folks don't want their kids to go somewhere else. In addition to the cost of busing, we have the fact that those kids have to get up at 4 in the morning, and that's a huge stress. So I would hope that at some point in time, they understand all of the costs involved in what we're trying to do at the state level and why it's not working. But just very quickly, tell us how many miles we drive in transporting students every day. Do you have that off the top of your head?
61,000 miles a day.
61,000 miles a day.
And I can tell you, this initiative or this is not something that is easy for transportation to, or support services transportation to go through, because as a father, when I'm trying to be told that my child who's in first grade should walk 1.8 miles to the school that they're assigned, I get it. I get the issues there, and when we get those phone calls, that's unfortunately what we'll have to see in some of those cases.
Mr. Belcher, do you have anything burning that you need to get out?
Nothing else. Really, we were just talking about, out of zone transportation, in which you touched on there. So, because that is very challenging out of normal zone transportation. So, and that's one of the issues why we're here too. So, to hopefully alleviate some of the issues we have with under 2 mile and charter schools, that we could hopefully help out in those areas with those that are, we're transporting out of zone. So,
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item you have is Mr. Perron with the financial advisor.
This,
Yeah,
okay, all right.
we're doing 2 agenda items at once.
Yes, two.
So Mrs. Usher has an update on some projects she wants to talk to you about, and then I'm gonna go into the second part.
Okay, good afternoon. On the agenda this evening, we have the creation of 3 projects. And these projects reflect what we told the public when we were out there talking about the sales tax. The first one is the new high school. We refer to it as 19 AAA. We have the property already, so we want to get started on that. The project we have before you tonight is for $6 million from impact fee to do the pre-construction, which includes the geotech, the survey, any type of pre-construction fees. The second one is Mulberry High School, and this is a complete modernization. We have $4 million in this project from sales tax. So we have been meeting with the school, and so we have started already with this. The third one is the addition and modernization of the old Davenport School, to convert that into a full functioning elementary school at about 870. We have had meetings already with the city of Davenport. They have already voted to abandon the roadway between the 2 sites to help us with constructing that school. And we do have $2 million in that project tonight from sales tax. So those are the 3 big projects you'll see tonight from the list of the sales tax project that we shared with the community.
Yay. Yay.
And that's just for the project number, correct?
This is just to create the project.
Project.
We will come
Right,
back
wanna
with
make sure we know
GMP,
that.
and we'll come back with the architect, we'll come back with the contractor, and all that.
That was kind of my question, was as far as, do we have a timeline of when our goal is to get these, I mean, I know Davenport Elementary School would be
Right, we
a
do.
revitalization, is that
We are
something?
hoping to open the new high school in August 21, the modernization of Mulberry August 22, and the elementary school August 20.
Okay. So that
So
would
we're
be
gonna be
not this
busy.
coming year, but next year.
Right, because we have a,
Perfect.
Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, so what point in time will you be able to give us a little sneak preview of some of the arts component at the new high school, on the Davenport School of the Arts property, the one that we're looking, 19 AAA? We're getting a lot of questions from the community, and I certainly would like to be able to tell them. So at what point can we get a little feeling? I know Ms. Cummings and I chatted, and she mentioned she was working very diligently, and that there will be quite a bit of arts component at the new high school, which makes sense, because those kids are gonna matriculate, if you will, from DSA to the new high school. I'm just wanting to know, I thought we would know something more today.
Mrs. Cunningham, also this evening's agenda
Yes.
is the contract with Schinkel
Right.
Schultz. They did the prototype in Hernando County. We traveled over the state, and based on security measures for compactness and cost per student station, this was the best model.
Okay.
We have a draft educational specification. We had meeting with the academic people, with Mrs. Dawson, with Beth Cummings, and we have drafted a educational specification that we'll be bringing to you that will have the components and what the school will look like.
Okay. When?
Okay?
Well,
What are you
we're
thinking?
gonna look at January, did we say, on that, I'm
On the high school, I'm hoping for January, yes,
That's what
because we're
January,
reviewing it right now.
early next year then?
Yes.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Okay.
Yeah, sometime
Thank you.
early.
Yes, we're very excited.
Okay. Ms. Fields, then Mr. Townsend, is that?
Yeah,
Ms.
that's
Coordinator, Ms. Fields?
Ms. Johnson, what was the end result of the vote for the Davenport elementary closing of that school? Was the decision made by the commissioners?
To close the roadway?
Yes.
Yes, it was unanimous, because the commissioner that was objecting, the state told me he has to abstain because it's a conflict. because he lives
He
right
lives
next
right
door.
there.
So it was a unanimous vote from the city
Yeah.
commission.
Been that way for
Okay,
years.
Mr. Townsend and
Why
Ms.
we
Courtney?
Right, I just, so, I just wanna clarify, Laura, you're asking for like a rendering of the high school, is that what you
Or
want?
just an
Or
idea, a lot of the
Programs.
people are asking
Oh, sorry.
programs,
Programs.
the art,
Oh,
what
okay,
art
okay.
components will be
Okay.
mirrored.
Yeah, I guess
What
and
I'm
my,
being asked. and
my
I
other
said, I don't know.
my other question was sort of related to the Davenport vote, just like, I mean.
We
it
did
is-
work with Dr. Aikes and his staff with the science, academies. We had a big meeting to look at the program, so we incorporated that into the high school ed specs.
Ms. Courtney?
Okay, did you happen to get the email from, Darlene Bradley, the former Davenport mayor? I
That's what they
forwarded
was
it,
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
pardon me?
I don't know. if
No,
Angela
she
has-
was at all the meetings
She was at-
objecting, but I have
Yeah.
not seen any email from her.
There's a history there,
Mhm.
maybe we'll get together over coffee,
Mhm.
bring you up to speed.
Well, the thing that stuck out to me is how old the building is.
Huh?
1927, is that accurate?
That is
It is
correct.
old.
The building is
Yeah,
Because in
nineteen
this
twenty-seven.
five-year plan, your best practices said not anything over 50 years old.
No, we tried to tear it, but this is,
Okay.
I mean,
I'm just curious.
we will do all the
National
analysis to
Historic
make
Places.
sure that the cost is justified and we don't exceed our costs. We'll do all our structural analysis, especially because, that is what we're most concerned about.
And we actually been in the building. It's a beautiful
Well, I
building.
know we have people
Yeah.
working in it right now.
Not that
Don't
part
we?
of the building.
Oh,
No, not
Okay.
that, not one we're doing. We'll bring you up to speed on that.
okay.
Okay?
Would you like to see
Okay.
this?
It's,
I
Ms.
just
Miller?
wanted to get a total number of students that school will serve.
Which one?
That, was it 800?
The high school?
Yes,
No,
we're
the
trying,
elementary.
the elementary, we're
Elementary.
working on it. It's like I said 870, it's 839. We'll do an additional classroom wing on it.
Okay.
So we're trying to bring up the capacity because we really do need elementary capacity in that area.
Oh, yeah, we do. So you're at like 850 plus?
Yes, that's,
Okay.
Mr. Wilson?
So I just want to remind everyone, I know you've heard this and you're going to get tired of hearing this, but I'm going to keep saying it. As we went through the renewing the sales tax referendum, the business community made it clear that they're averse to bonding that sales tax revenue stream. Now, we may have to some extent, we understand that. And they certainly have no issues with bonding the sales tax revenue stream to the extent that we can then pay it off with impact fees. And Mr. Crone and I had this discussion. The impact fees we're currently generating are about $15 million a year. I have every reason to believe those are going to continue to increase somewhat. But there are a lot of hidden costs to bonding, and so they're not crazy about us doing that, except to the extent we absolutely have to. So let's keep that in mind as we do this and try our best. Not to do that, because obviously we'll need their help sometime in the future, and that was the thing I heard most, that they're not crazy about us bonding that revenue stream. Now, I know Mr. Perone explained to me the other day that in some cases, there could be legal challenges to bonding the revenue stream and paying it off with impact fees, but if we can do that, I think that's the best possible solution.
okay. And we do have some other additions in the plan. We have some classroom additions and several other projects that we will need to complete with impact fees.
Yeah, okay.
So a nice segue into the next. Should the board decide to take on debt service for some of these projects, we will need to contract with a financial advisor. So we have brought back that item for the new members a year ago, or a little over a year ago in October. We brought to the board, we did an RFQ, and we had two vendors bid. And you have in front of you the scoring from both of the folks that submitted proposals. And so we are bringing that back because we will need to have someone on board should the board decide to take on debt. So we have the two bidders were PFM and Ford and Associates. You have all the information. We are recommending to go with the evaluation committee's selection, which was PFM.
Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, we've waited almost a year and a half to bring this back to us. It's kind of interesting that we would choose this first meeting of some new board members to do that, number one. Number two is, it was very vague in there. Didn't even tell you who the community representatives are from the different towns. Usually when we have a committee that the district has structured, there's the name and who they are that qualifies them to be able to review these RFPs. Thirdly, I would like to see that. I'm making a major decision, and I would like things like compensation, their scope of services. I have an old contract in my hand that I'm reviewing. Responsibilities of the board, limitations of liability, binding assignment, severability. I think something this big, that's a huge person that's gonna be part of our district, I think they need to be weighed, and I'm not saying that the committee didn't do a good job. I really don't know what they looked at. I saw the 4 individuals or a title of them, but not who they are. And then I would like to see both of those contracts. I don't know what the other board members feel, but I would like to know, just like we talked about for the electronic agenda presentations, there was 2 that were the top, and they brought both of them here today, and both of them were able to speak. I don't know if PFM is in the back. I see some, I don't know who they're with, either one, but it would be nice to understand, you know, what each of them has to offer, and I would personally like to see their contracts, to see what, because I thought it was interesting on a couple of them, how they rated one very high and one medium on their ability to service the client. And I think both probably would score very high from the background information that I have with one of those. So I just feel like there needs to be more information, at least for this board member to make a decision.
I agree with that. When I requested, like when I requested the score sheets, I thought it was gonna come with more information. So I would like to see that as well, especially as a new board member. But I was waiting for more information on those too.
Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Fields.
Well, we did have a very comprehensive review of this, and I think actually PFM was very good about answering the questions that Mrs. Cunningham just asked. The one thing that stood out to me is that PFM was significantly larger in scope and had staff that specialized in the areas of concern. And, you know, Mr. Perone will understand that I've been been very inquisitive over the past few years about the services that were provided. And there was one instance in particular that caught my attention that was somewhat concerning to me, and it had to do with some sinking funds and some sinking fund matters. And I think, and look, let me be clear, I think that Mr. Ford and his firm are very fine people. I'm going to be very clear about that. But I think they might have missed the boat and cost us a significant amount of money in not addressing those sinking fund issues at that time. And again, I think that's a staff issue. I think it's just a staffing issue and size issue. And so those are my thoughts about it. I'm not even sure. I mean, I think the superintendent's brought this forward as is really to the board as a consideration, because I don't believe she really needs a board vote on this. I think she may be looking for our consensus, but I'm not sure that it requires a board vote.
What does it? All right. So what are we looking for?
Well, I think just really, Madam Superintendent?
Yes, it was, if you recall, when we had this discussion a while back, PFM was here, and I'm not sure, I can't remember if Mr. Ford was here or not, but I do remember.
He was not.
He was not. But I
no.
remember they were here. The committee members were present at that time, am I correct? Dan?
Correct.
The committee that was selected was present. At that time, it was stated that I would bring back the final recommendation, which advisor we were gonna go with. And that's what was stated at that point, who we were gonna go with. And so at this point, because we gotta start looking at our projects that's coming on, we're gonna need to have an advisor that can handle that. And my suggestion and my recommendation is we go with the committee selection. And the committee selected PFM back at that time. Ms. Fields?
Well, a couple of things. When this was presented to us back in August of 2017, a lot of the backup stuff was not here. And I requested it, if we were to have this to come back, we could see more information. And as Ms. Cunningham said, to be a little bit more astute on what we were talking about. Another thing is, Mr. Ford was not given an opportunity to present, to my knowledge. And I'm not really sure what Mr. Wilson is saying, but I think that if something like that is being said, Mr. Ford should be able to speak to that. I understand that this decision is Ms. Bird's decision, and that's fine. I just think that more information and the process could have been a little bit cleaner and a little bit more objective. That's just my opinion on the matter. And the scores are very close.
Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, this happened quite some time ago, and I have a hard time remembering the specifics of a lot of what was said. I do remember that it's the only RFP or RFQ, I guess it's RFQ, that's actually been run before us, that I can ever remember ever having any committee present to us. The more I've learned about how, I mean, this is like a Coke and Pepsi thing. These are the two guys that do this in Florida, and they seem to battle pretty hard for business. I guess this is just part of what I don't like about the business of education as a whole. I mean, I think Mike probably has a relationship with those guys over time. I think he's dealt with them. I think Lori has a relationship with Jerry over time. I mean, I think this is unfortunately, it's become a relationship-based thing. And I'm not an expert. I have to sort of rely on what the experts are telling us, and I'm just sort of thinking out loud out here. I guess I'm inclined to move forward with PFM. I guess I'm mostly inclined to move forward with who staff wants to work with. If that's, and they did run a process through here. I'm not convinced it was a great process, but it was a process. And I think, Lori, in fairness, I don't think you were here during that meeting, right? You weren't here. Anyway, I think this entire issue is pretty frustrating. I guess I'm on record as being in favor of going ahead with PFM based on a lot of what Lynn said, and also what I heard at the meeting last year.
But I don't feel that, as Ms. Field said, that Board and Associates had the opportunity to address Mr. Wilson's concerns in public.
And I think that's key in public.
Pardon me?
I think that's a key point, and they didn't do it in public. So I agree with that.
But they weren't asked to come here to say, because he wasn't here.
Well, but to be clear, I wasn't saying, I wasn't talking about his concerns. I was talking about his question of scope. And I think scope was something that was addressed by the RFQ committee. They talked about ability to do the work, and I think that's what I'm referring to. I'm not in a position to judge the quality of the sinking fund
Sure.
response.
Are there any questions?
Are we going to get that information we've asked? Because there's 3 of us here that just asked to get the information before moving forward.
What exactly is their response to the RFQ?
Yes, please. Their contract, what it is you're going to present to them, scope of services, the cost, everything. So they're both side by side to be evaluated, be looked at.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
Yes.
What does this, what is the consequence of
it?
this that we're
Right,
doing?
that's what I'm saying. Scope of work, what's the compensation rates, yada, yada.
So can you get that from, PFM and then we can send that out?
We have the responses,
We have the responses.
responses
For
to
both.
the RFP.
Yes,
Presumably there'll be a contract that comes before us, is that?
right, should
Right.
be. Yes, that's the next
So
step.
we don't have that part yet.
But there will, at some point.
Yes.
Yes,
No.
that will be, that's what I was thinking.
After the
Yes.
selection, then there would be a contract.
Okay, I see,
It's
good,
a
good.
contract. Mr. Wilson?
I'm gonna offer final comments, and I'm gonna have to be quiet about this. I concur with Mr. Townsend, it's a very frustrating thing for me, from my perspective, and this is just from my perspective. PFN has been very clear, they've been very unequivocal, they've been very straightforward in answering questions, any questions I've asked, and any questions that we've asked as a board. I don't mean to impair the integrity or the character of Mr. Ford, but I just don't feel like I got those answers. They weren't clear, they weren't unequivocal, there were a lot of buts and maybes, and so, you know, here's the thing about education. We can try different things in the classroom to see if they work. We can try different approaches, and we should be open to that. But when it comes to financial matters, we shouldn't be trying things that are untested. There's certain things that work, we know they work, they've worked through time and over time, and we need to be focused on that. I'm gonna offer this. You know, there was a time when our school district had really struggled with financial statements, and there were implications to that. It created issues with our credit rating, and it created issues with the interest rate we were able to get, and we have a massive amount of debt. That was incredibly expensive to this district. And we found ourselves in the crosshairs of the DOE. We've seen some of that pushback. This latest audit report I had the privilege of attending, and I apologize, Mr. Prone, if I'm getting out in front of you a little bit here, was absolutely exemplary. It just couldn't have been better. And so what that does is it lowers our credit rating, increases our credit rating, lowers the interest rates that we pay on our debt, helps us clear up that debt, takes us off of the, out of the crosshairs of the DOE in the state of Florida. So many positive things to that. So I think we do ourselves a big favor when we're very clear about what's happening. So that's my take on it, and I'm all for bringing whatever the board wants to do and bringing somebody back and talking to them, but that's my experience.
Ms. Reynolds?
I think too, it is worthy to note that we sent out an RFQ for this, and then we got it back, and there was a selection made by the committee, and we determined that we didn't want to necessarily go with the selection made by the committee at that point, which, if we're going to do an RFQ, I think that's the point of doing an RFQ, is to get a team of professionals that are experts in the area to make a decision, or to help us make a decision. So I am all for going with the group that they selected as the experts in the subject.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item for you have been getting a lot of questions regarding graduation ceremonies. So I've asked Ms. Dawson, who's our regional assistant superintendent for high schools, and she's been working really closely with all the high school principals and RP funding and all the sites where graduations will be held. And there's some new criteria that RP funding has in place as it relates to security. So I thought before we send out anything to the community, it comes before you and you hear it so that you are able to ask any questions or either provide any additional information that you would like for us.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We do have changes with graduation this year. And, you know, that's one thing that can be very tense, messing with graduation.
Already.
We don't dare want to mess with the ceremony. But a couple of things that are new to RP funding this year is, you know, the brand RP funding, with that came a remodel. When they remodeled the arena, they reduced the seats. So we are now down to where we've had about 5,000 seats. In the past, we're down to about 4,000 seats that we can have for our general audience for the graduations. So last year, George Dickens High School and Ridge Community High School exceeded the capacity of the arena. They brought chairs in the hallways, and I think they should not have done that. So RP said that in relation to the fire marshal and then also the remodel, we have to reduce the number of guests that we invite. The other big component of it is the new security measures with RP funding. We're going to a system where all of the guests come through metal detectors. There's some wands there, so that requires extra security for attendance to graduation. And also we now have to have ticket takers to take those tickets for the people that come in for the ceremonies. We've worked out at the garage door at the back of the arena, school board employees that have the ID badge, they can go through that door, not have to go through security. And then also our band students and chorus students that perform at the arena, they'll have special wristbands for their graduation. They can go through that door as well and not have to go through security. Basically, they'll open the doors 2 hours prior to graduation to try to get everyone in through the security and get their tickets and get them seated. So I looked at the tickets will be numbered. The kids will be assigned specific numbers whenever they are given their tickets. And on the back of the ticket will be safety procedures that we'll now follow. One of them includes the size of the bag, you know, that people will allow to be able to bring in. No air horns, stuff like that. But when I look at the number of seniors that schools currently have, Ridge Community High School is the biggest school. They currently have 632 seniors. That equates to about 6 tickets per senior. Mulberry High School, 285 seniors. That equates to 14 tickets per senior. So it's, you know, the size of the graduating class determines the number of tickets that students are given. Something that all of the schools are doing right now is sending home a survey with the students to ask the students and their parents, how many tickets do you need? And just because you write that on this paper doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to get those tickets. There are some students that may only need 2 tickets. So our goal is to hold back extra tickets and do our best to accommodate, you know, all the guests that people want to invite. I can say, like, just kind of checking with our surrounding districts that are large. Orange County has been on a ticket system for quite a few years. They give out 5 to 6 tickets, and what they tell their kids, you need more tickets, get on social media and ask your friends from their friends. So they sell tickets. The kids will sell tickets to, you know, to their peers.
We don't sell tickets.
Entrepreneurs.
That's the kids.
Yeah, so that's why we decided to go to the survey route and kind of hold back tickets, and if we can give extra to people, then give extra to people.
And this is already being discussed, because I've been asked by a few people.
Yeah, we've gotten calls.
Yeah, we've gotten calls
Yes,
already.
you're-
So here's what they're saying, so I'm graduating and I get my 6, and she gets her 6, and she gets hers. She may only have 3, so can I just say, hey, give me your other 3, because I gotta, so,
You can.
rather than you're holding, I don't understand that we're holding it back.
Well, because we want to give it to somebody that wants 9 tickets as opposed to only wants 6 tickets. You know what, because we have had a few kids that say, I only want 2 tickets, my mom and my dad are coming.
So don't give them.
So instead of giving that student all 6 of those tickets,
Right.
we'll only give that student 2 tickets, and
Right.
we'll have a waiting list for all of the
Oh,
extra
that was my
tickets.
question, how are you, okay.
So you're not handing every senior gets 6 tickets, you're letting them order how many,
What they need.
with
Yeah.
a maximum of 6?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes, because we're hoping that maybe we can give extra tickets to families that really want the extra tickets and, you know, we'll have extra guests that will come.
It's gonna be.
Something else to note too is that, you know, all the graduations at RP are live streamed. So we're really, Rachel's going to help us too. You can go online and watch it while it's happening. So Rachel her department is helping us promote that as well.
Is there a delay on that?
No, it's live.
No.
Didn't we do that last year? I
We
thought
did
the
that
guys
We
did it
for-
last year,
we've
right?
done it for a few years.
Okay.
2 years now.
Yeah, and that's very popular too. So we're trying to, you know, if we get phone calls, tell the guests that, you know, if we can't get enough tickets, then they can watch the graduation
Who's taking
live.
those phone calls?
Really?
From grandma,
Yes.
who's not gonna be able to make it, okay.
We've actually got some positive results
You know,
from people.
on the other hand,
across
when we
these
started doing
projects.
that, we got phone calls from people that said that they had elderly
Right.
family members that were too frail to go to graduation, and they just greatly appreciated, you know, being able to get online and watch it, you know, from their home, and we did that. I did a little checking with Hillsborough County too, you know, they have their graduation at the Florida Fairgrounds, and that seats 8,000. But when you look at square footage of that building, it's 110 square feet compared to RP funding that's 25,000 square feet. So it's quadruple the size of RP funding. And that's why, because that's a county that's not on a ticket system. You know, as many people can go that want to go. And I think their biggest graduating class is 700. Yes.
I just have a question, we're seating based on, the stage setup, so you're not using the back behind the stage, right?
Yes, we do use
We
that.
do, we do all the way around,
We
we
use
ring the
all
circle,
the way
okay.
around. Yeah.
And I just wanna make sure there's a point person, if it's gonna be site-based, depending on schools, because the phones are ringing mostly from teachers that are parents, that are kind of heard this is happening, of who they go to get this, because if, you know,
Like the
we have a hard
extra-
time getting that message out sometimes, and it's just chaotic.
Mhm.
So if we have some people, if they call me and I say, you know, the front office is gonna have this information, or your senior coordinator is gonna have this, and, you know, there's gotta be someone that we can send them directly to.
Right, and there are senior sponsors for every graduating class, but I would think the front office would be the easiest for them to, you know, get in touch with to talk about the tickets.
And the back door entrance, is that for this badge and their party?
That's for the badge and for students that have a written.
So you're sending everyone else around front?
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Fields?
I hear from a lot of students, Girls Inc. and Boys and Girls Club next door, and there's a perception that they're gonna have to pay for the tickets. I know that. I know it's not. I said no. I didn't even know the answer, but I said no. And so my thing is, we really need to make that clear,
Okay.
because that's what's out, and the kids are very upset about it, thinking that they're gonna have to pay for a seat.
Right, yeah.
So we
And that
really
it's
need to
general
make sure.
admission, that they're not assigned, that you're getting a ticket into the door, but you're not, you know, then it's your job to find your seats.
Right.
I'll add
That is true.
We have a press release that's gonna be going out, and the reason we want to get this out again early, so we can get that out and get it on our web, and we can have all those, we can answer questions back and forth. But we do, Rachel and Tammy has been working on a press release. After this, they're gonna push that out by the end of the week, this week. I saw Mr. Townsend, Ms. Reynolds, Dennis Fortney.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that extent, repetition is important, don't just do it once, like keep pushing it out. I wonder, the other, I mean, Mulberry's not a problem,
Right.
Kathleen's not really a problem, if I remember right, it was,
No, they were full last year.
were they?
They were
I was-
full, yes.
Yeah, Kathleen,
They were full.
Kathleen would be 8.8 tickets.
Yeah, they were full last year.
Well, anyway, there are some that are much, but like, it seemed like Lakeland High wasn't fully full, you know, they're like, so I wonder, the upshot is, if there are schools that we know aren't gonna fill it, do we have to impose tickets on them? Like, I mean, why complicate it for them when they don't need it? I guess that's one thought.
Security is part of it.
Okay, so it's also a security
Yeah,
thing.
we're going to,
Okay.
the security measures will be printed on the back of every ticket.
Okay. The other thing that I've actually heard more than the ticket problem is just the timing.
timing.
Of, like, there was, I think, Lake Region particularly was, like, I think they have an early afternoon schedule.
told Lakeland's
I think
8
you're
o'clock.
gonna talk, no.
Yes, our graduations, and this was set by RP
Okay.
funding, the times are 2 p.m. and 8 p.m.
Okay.
The 5 schools that have a 2 p.m. graduation, we're actually doing early release for them.
Okay.
So they will get out at noon,
Okay.
and be able to get to
Okay.
the venue.
And that's for all the kids?
Yes,
Yeah,
for all the
I think that's what somebody was actually asking for, good.
2 and 8?
2 and 8.
2 and 8, because they
Why?
have to allow time for them to get through the metal detectors, it's security, and those are their time.
Oh, it's gonna be a
I'm
nightmare.
really,
Yeah, they gotta
I'm
get
really
them through there.
hoping,
That's insane.
yeah, because this
8
is
o'clock.
new for
They're doing
them.
the same
I'm
thing
really
they do for the
hoping that
games.
it flows very smoothly, and
It
next
should.
year, or the, the following year, we can put the graduations closer together again. But that was the times that they said that we needed
No,
to have them
we
out.
have them in the
Every
28.
day
We have
in
one
April,
between.
please be patient
We
with
have
us,
one
we
in
like put that out
between.
over and over
Yes.
again.
Yeah.
We have one in
We
between?
got them in between the 2 and the 8.
That's what I'm at.
Right, we have,
But
they
they're just-
start at 2, the last one that starts at 8.
Oh, I thought she said just 2 and
No.
8.
No,
No.
2
We'll
and,
be
2
there
and
for
8
weeks.
every day of our, that we're doing graduations.
No, we
Just
got one,
two.
you got a 2 o'clock, you got a 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock?
Is it 5
There's
or 4?
no 5
They
o'clock
took it out?
graduation. It is,
2 and 8.
It was,
it's a 2 and 8, with the only exception is Harrison. So we have a 2 o'clock graduation, 4 o'clock Harrison in the UP, 8 o'clock Lakeland High School.
so they removed the
Yeah.
4 o'clock altogether?
Yeah, they're all 2 and 8. And then Winter Haven is the last graduation. It's actually at 6 because it's the only graduation that day.
That day, so yours is
And I don't know if Sarah Beth has gotten a lot of this, but being from Winter Haven, I've gotten a ton of angry phone calls.
Listen.
And I know it's a principal's, that wasn't our decision, but there needs to be like some kind of messaging, welcoming, because you know, Winter Haven, Lakeland, the whole 100 years of being
Oh.
completely separate.
They're moving it?
Winter Haven will be at the RP Funding Center, which is not getting a lot of happy feedback from parents right now that I hear from.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
maybe
forget
some
about the
kind of,
tickets, that's
yeah,
why
they're
they're
not concerned
all
with
in Winter
tickets,
Haven
they're
right
concerned
now.
we've moved them off they have been moved from their field, where they've graduated 100 years.
But I wanna be
Tickets are the
clear,
last
we
thing we're
did not do
concerned
about.
that,
Oh, I know,
we did not do that.
But we
That's
did
at
help with the
school level.
messaging, we did help with the messaging of
Okay,
that.
so their process
bold.
in
Really?
Winter Haven was that, they brought in their student government and their whole senior class voted on it. Their SAC, committee also voted on it as well.
Right.
They, Winter
Send
Haven
those people to them.
administration did not make that decision on their
Yeah,
own.
It's not us.
Because they were worried about that too. They wanted to make sure there was buy-in, from, the parents and all the kids, and the kids voted for it. I think it was fairly high too, I can't
That would be a
remember.
great messaging, like, your
Yes.
students voted for this, because if that's not gotten out, it's gotten out, you want us to drive to Lakeland and this is not, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe, you know, students were involved in this new venue.
Okay.
Right, yeah, they wanted the students definitely to have ownership of that when they did it.
So we wanna bring the job descriptions back later? or do we do
I
that
think
for
they'll,
now?
I think they'll go, I think we have to let it go. One on that needs to go.
We're-
Okay, any other
I think you could
questions?
just ask.
Yeah,
if
I
you
wanted
had
to
questions.
ask something about,
Ms.
Ms.
Courtney?
Miller, the point person would be the school site for what, Lisa?
For the tickets and or,
They haven't seen it.
For tickets and
Have
questions
seniors.
that they have.
Mm-hmm.
but that's Sarah Beth's school that I was referring to.
Yeah, I know, I just, I foresee maybe you better have I mean, it's pretty hectic in an office that, I mean, I don't know, I would think that this is kinda coming from the district, it needs to kinda be coordinated from the district as
We
far as,
have-
I mean, you have the tickets there, but I just hate to add something else into an office
We-
of busy people.
We've been working on it for about, what, 2 months? 2 months now? And what we're gonna do now, we feel like we got a plan, we're gonna keep that plan going out. It's gonna start going out now,
We've,
so that they know. But they
yeah.
have senior sponsors and everything on campus too.
We've sent a recommended survey that the high schools could use to survey their students on, how many, if they could get the number of tickets they want, how many they would want, understanding that it's not guaranteed, so we've been sending out messages.
Okay, Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Cunningham?
Could you send us a list with who the point person is for each school, so that as we're getting calls from parents, we can direct them
Sure.
to the right point person, not the principal or the secretary or
I'll
whoever?
get the list of senior sponsors.
At least with an email address that
Okay,
they can email them directly.
okay.
Good job, Sarah Beth.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
And that was my
Cunningham?
thing, I was gonna ask you if you could find out who it is specifically, and then who does it come to here?
Okay,
So
so
we,
like,
so that everybody knows.
right, for Haines City, today it was actually Miss Edmonston, that I saw her name today dealing with the tickets with, but I can get the
If
list.
you
I just don't wanna
for
send them
everybody.
and say, contact
Yeah.
Adam Lane
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
not the one that.
Or just
he's
call
gonna
your
bounce
school.
them somewhere else.
We
Yeah,
don't
that
wanna
was my
call
I
the
wanna make
school.
sure they're going to the
And
right
then they'll say,
person
I have no idea what you're
directly
talking
from
about.
us.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right, I haven't heard of that, you sure?
Is Auburndale the only one that doesn't do RP?
Frostproof and
Frostproof still does.
Fort Meade,
Fort
Auburndale.
Meade.
It is hot.
And the Travis and Ridge are still doing
They do, I think.
their separate
Ridge is
buildings,
at
right?
Lake
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 Eola,
Eva.
okay. They
Yeah.
haven't moved.
Yeah, they haven't
Mm-mm.
moved.
They haven't
It's
moved.
just our traditional high schools.
When you do frostproof, you have to bring sun lotion.
It
Yeah.
rained last year, we
It
did
did.
it.
I did it.
Mhm.
So call trends and calls like previous years, we got calls for the weather and calls, like being outside at graduation. My office, we get calls for the weather, calls for the distance to travel. And then this year now it's ticket calls, but when we tell them that we're live streaming, I think that makes some of them feel a little bit better, but it's definitely not gonna make everyone happy. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Next, you have job descriptions items. I'm gonna clump them together if you don't mind for the sake of time. You have items 5, 6, 7, 8. There are job descriptions. Do we have any questions on any of those, 5, 6, 7, and 8? Ms. Fields?
I'm just wanting to know why are we changing the mental health facilitator, from a non-union to a union position?
Originally, when we drafted the job description, we did not look well, one, we were kind of in a rush, to be frank. It was a part of this Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act. We needed to get it done. And so, I just wanted it done. Then two, when I look back at the social workers, other mental health facilitators, they are included in the union. And so I've worked with Mary Ann to make sure that this position was included in the union as well. And three, we actually did advertise it, with it being a non-union position. I think Mary Ann brought it to my attention that it should be union, and when we did, we received teachers saying, hey, are you sure that this is correct, because it should be a union position, and they would take a loss in pay if it were a non-union position. We didn't want anyone to take a loss in pay.
Okay, and then another question is the pay. It says $24,459. Is that a partial year or something?
Mental health facilitator?
Yes, that's what it says.
No, actually, it's much more than that. It's the portion that we would have to pay for, not necessarily the whole position. The entire whole position is paid for off of the 11-month or the 10-month teacher salary. And then that is an additional amount, the $24,000 that we'll have to pay.
Mr. Wilson?
Is that a pay increase for one individual or across the?
It's across the board.
Okay.
There are a number of those positions, so it's that extra month, that 11th month of service that
Okay.
we'll have to pay. It's an average number. It's not necessarily specific to any one person at this time.
Can you tell me how many positions? It's a lot of positions, I was assuming, like 21, is it?
I think it's actually 25 positions.
And we feel like we're gonna be able to fill,
Hopefully.
okay, that's my concern.
Okay. Any other questions on 5, 6, 7, and 8?
Just very briefly on
Mr. Townsend?
on the senior manager for risk management, this is the benefits manager, is that?
It's actually both. It's, what we've done is looked at, well, it's risk management and benefits, correct. So it is already in the budget, and it's already on the org charts, but we never submitted the job description for the position.
So have you put together the job that Ms. Cumby and
No.
I'm losing my.
Joy Myers.
No.
No,
Joy Myers.
Joy Myers, no.
Okay.
It's a hybrid of that job, essentially. It's above Joy's, or it's above Tiffany's old position, but below Joy's old position.
Are both of those old positions still in place? So you've created a new one in between?
This was a new position that was added in the
Okay.
17,
Okay.
18 staffing.
The job description was just not attached to that?
Okay.
So we need to bring that in there.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. While we have Ms. Porteous there, we have item 9, which is the revised school calendar.
And, Madam Superintendent, we have a discipline meeting at 4.
Yes, no parents
No
are there.
parents, so can we move that to 4:30?
Yes, we can. I'll say.
I have a question on the calendar.
Ms. Fields?
Why are we doing graduation so early, almost like a month? I don't remember us doing it, so,
So again, oh, sorry, were you done?
no, you're fine.
Okay, this was based on, in consultation with the RP Funding Center and the dates that they were available as well. So,
Thank you.
Mrs. Fortney?
How do you get on the calendar committee?
it's just, an invite, normally it's the superintendent's calendar committee. Many of you have, committee members that are there and that are present that will represent you. But it is the superintendent's calendar committee. I think Mrs. Cunningham does have someone, Mrs. Fields has someone, and I think that was it. I don't remember anyone else submitting any other names.
My
But we
ears are
did work
burning
with-
off.
Are
Oh,
they?
yeah, wait,
You need to s-
we're supposed to submit names for the calendar?
Sure, or just tell her who you
Yeah.
like as a representative on there. That's very
Joanne
important.
actually worked with Susan,
'Cause then they call.
I think, to
Yes,
coordinate.
Yes,
then I
right,
call.
coordinate get names. If you want someone on there, just give her
Yes,
the name.
just give her the names.
Am I not allowed to be on?
Or Florida's, or I don't know, Wes?
Wes.
That's a West question. Normally, we just
There's
appoint
Wes.
Yeah, we
someone.
appoint someone.
Typically.
Typically.
Typically,
Typically, we appoint someone.
Typically, we- yeah, okay.
Calendar committee,
You
yeah.
appoint some, yeah, you appoint someone, is what he's saying,
I don't know,
to represent you.
that's the way we've always done it.
She's asking, you're asking if you can appoint yourself.
That's what I'm asking. This is the most, the most I hear, is about the calendar, and we go back on a Friday. Who made that?
Do we have someone who's currently
That's
appointed?
going off.
We did work with PEA on that.
Yes.
I know.
PEA, Sydney. Who-
But as y'all know, it's hard to
they
describe,
select
it's hard to say that,
Yeah, I mean,
and people understand.
Mr. Chair,
They
do we have
don't.
someone who's currently appointed?
No. As a board member?
No.
No.
We used
No.
to have someone,
Yeah,
and
we
You do
did.
not,
we
well,
used to have
Fields, you,
someone,
oh.
we stopped, I'm not really understanding why, but we used to have.
Oh, you had a
someone
board
for the
member?
I'll volunteer.
Tag, you're it.
Okay.
I would
So we
love
have-
that this Whitney on the
We
calendar
have
committee.
committee appointments coming up a little bit later.
Okay.
That's the board committee. I think that's it.
Congratulations.
Are you redoing the committee? Is that committee sitting, or can we add to that committee at any point,
You can add.
is my
I'm
question.
not sure.
Can
Well,
we
let's-
have Susan send us who is, if we each are supposed to have an appointment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do we?
we'll get that information and then send it out so that we're all on the
And if
same
there are
page.
any other committees we're supposed to be appointing people to,
Right.
let them that I don't know about.
And we'll get
I just
what
know for
Wes wrote.
others, we get, it's like a 3-year term, and so we
Right.
get
Right, that's what
a
I'm saying.
notice that we need to
Right.
appoint someone
Yeah,
else, so
right.
I don't.
Or
even
the
know
sitting
what
committee members that others have appointed.
Right, that's
or
what I'm saying, is,
Your-
you know,
That may be empty if we don't reappoint.
So
Your
we'll-
policy says that the superintendent shall annually appoint a calendar committee to develop a school calendar for presentation to the school board no later than March 1st each year.
So, not tomorrow.
That is all it says. Madam Superintendent, you may appoint as you wish.
Can you get one?
So we'll get the names of the committee and who they represent, and then we'll, get that information back to you. Okay.
I have a couple more questions, please.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Fields.
For the 1920 calendar, Ms. Treasurer, why did we change the spring break week? from-
Testing,
Testing.
Excuse me,
testing.
testing?
Yes, ma'am.
And then, why do we have student early dismissal on the last day of school?
It's
What is the
requested,
purpose of that?
it's requested every year. We get a number of calls. I'm sure others, I guess other board members get a number of calls from parents requesting or asking if that day is a early dismissal day as well.
It could be.
Yes.
Or it could be an
So
early
it could be no day.
I'm sorry.
It could be no day.
The day
Yes,
before
so-
the early dismissal.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And then the day
Right.
Because they have to have so many days.
Right.
That's,
Underneath.
that's,
So Ms. Fields,
It's
we
crazy.
normally have done the last day of school, and we've always released them early, but we don't put it on the calendar, and so parents have asked us, if you're gonna do it, could you put it on the calendar?
Sorry,
The reason that we put it, we kinda hold is because you have to have so much, the seat time is what's important,
I
you know,
understand
just
that,
like
but
when
I
we get
just
the
think it's
hurricane.
just wasteful. But that's just my opinion on that.
Okay,
But by the time the kids get to school, it's time for them to come home.
Yeah, I had asked for that last year just because we get, the past 2 years, they haven't announced it until like
Right.
6 weeks out, so I know one of my schools, they were planning something, an award ceremony for that afternoon,
I understand.
and then had to completely change it because nobody was gonna be there. So I had just asked that if we're gonna do it, we put it on the calendar, so we didn't.
A couple superintendents before, we actually had to give a final exam that day.
I remember that. That was insane.
A couple before.
Any other questions?
Depends.
Okay. All right, thank you. And item 10, policy updates, Ms. Dodge.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Before you today, we have 6 policies, 2 of which are related. The first one, visitation of schools by school board members, was required by HB 7069, and that is a new board bylaw, and I did not indicate that on the summary, so I apologize for that. It's new, it's not an update, it's new language. The same with the second one, which is Hope Scholarships, that is a new policy. Personnel files is an update, and that is one that we, for the new board members' benefit, when we make changes to a policy that we have in all of our personnel selections, we usually bring you the teacher version of the policy, and we will make the same changes in the administrative and the support staff sections. The next one is the district budget, and that is as a result of changes that were made in HB 7055, where it talks about which funds you can use flexibly or not. And it also has language in there about notifying the board about fund balance. And school visitors is updated to reflect the changes that we put in the new board bylaw. And charter schools is a very lengthy policy, and all the changes in there are required by 7069 and 7055.
Are there any questions? Mr. Townsend?
Bob was going to go first. I think we put our hands on first. Go ahead.
And we talked about this, and I'm going back, when we list the new policy based on statute, is it how it reads, and then we're adding to it to cover the board policy or the bylaw? Are we changing the bylaw? I mean, when you notify, because if you look up the statutes, there's no summary that reads what we've done. So is that like an interpretation of the statute? Is that our?
It depends. Some of them are Neola's paraphrasing of the statute. The board bylaw 172, that is new, and it's almost word for word exactly what statute says. And then 9150 is an existing policy, so we're trying to add that into what is already in place.
And I know we've had, because I do a lot of policy and statutes in my spare time. But
Sorry about that.
This one I'll just tell you from a principal standpoint as a new board member visiting schools. The first thing a principal wants for me to do is follow chain of command. If I see something in the hallway or if a brick is loose on the side of the building, the last thing to build a relationship with a principal is to be a reporter back to the superintendent's office. I just think I've been asked multiple times, if you see something, say something please. I'd like, to have that kind of open relationship with you, and that's what I want. I don't want to be kept from schools or kind of feed the fear culture that I'm there to inspect them or inspect what they're doing. And when you read this, it could read that way, and if it's passed along in a meeting or in some other kind of setting, it could be interpreted that way. And being familiar with Neola and the 6 states that they serve, I appreciate having them. They're not a governing body, but a body that can at least interpret statute for us and create this. I just want to make sure that we as a board understand that it's, that this is our policy, and we need to be very careful with how our messaging is perceived by our schools and our school staff. And so I do not support how it currently reads, because I think it would be a barrier, and yet another barrier to creating relationships with our schools and our community.
Okay, so you're talking about the second paragraph in the bylaw where it talks about the superintendent directs work, and so if you have thoughts on what happened at the school,
If I have thoughts.
you would,
Right.
you would give those to the superintendent. And then
Right.
we've changed it in the school visitor policy. Right now it says if you have thoughts, you give it to the principal. And we're in the recommendation from Neola was to change that and say, no, you give it to the superintendent, so they would match. So it's your policy, if the board has consensus, that they would just like you guys to be able to.
Not that we wouldn't follow up with the superintendent on things, but to send another message that we're here to be, you know, that's not what I want to send to my District 7. I want to create relationships with the schools, so when I come to a community event, you know, there's already a perceived notion of a board member on campus. I do not want it to be perceived that I'm there to report on them.
Agreed.
Mr. Townsend, then Ms. Reynolds.
Yeah, and I just want to build on that point and make a larger point, like that these policies fit into. I would strike that entire last paragraph. In fact, I probably won't support this policy unless that the entire last paragraph is struck. For one thing, suggestions and feedback are two very different things. You know, feedback is, boy, the campus look nice. I mean, I have to go tell the superintendent to tell the principal that the campus look nice. I just think that's impractical, and I think like Ms. Miller said, kind of puts a barrier up. But even bigger than that, like and you know, I was looking through the statutes on what the superintendent's duties are. There are a couple of really interesting bits of language there. One says the district school superintendent shall exercise all powers and perform all duties listed below and elsewhere in the law, provided that in so doing he or she shall advise and counsel is the phrase, with the district school board. And then a little bit lower down it says superintendent shall cooperate with the district school board in every manner practicable to the end that the district school system may continuously be improved. I think the board has changed a bit, you know, in this past election and last couple of elections. I think what the meaning of advise and counsel and cooperate with the board or something we need to work out a little bit better than we've worked out, I think. And you know, I think channeling all suggestions and feedback back through a central command is probably not consistent with that. What I'd like to do is pass the statutory aspects of these policies if we want, and then have very soon a work session, or make it as part of our strategic plan stuff to kind of get a sense of what we think advise and counsel means. You know, you know, that's my larger point, and part of this plays into the difficulty in communicating. And this was just something that fell through the cracks. But I sent an email asking for the median teacher salary last week, a week ago, to like 6 people. I copied OAN and superintendent. No one even acknowledged it. Now, they actually went and fulfilled, they say they're in the process of fulfilling it, but I didn't even get acknowledged. And I think you're seeing, I've followed some of the email traffic with Ms. Miller and some of the things she's asking, and those are conversational things. It's very difficult for us when every piece of information is a transaction. You know, education is complex, and you guys are subject matter experts that we need to be able to talk to. I mean, if I need to go understand some of the give and take on the 2 mile rule, it's very helpful to be able to talk to Rob about that. And you know, that's not undercutting anybody. It's just not making sure you guys have to do it all the time, because the way we're doing it now, it's here's a specific question. Joanne takes it, goes out, runs it down, sends it back. Inevitably, that's not exactly what's asked, or there's confusion, or there's a follow-up, and it comes back through. There's no ability to converse and you know, work collaboratively. So you know, I see visits and conversations at schools as a collaborative thing. I would love to work out a dynamic in which we could collaborate in a way that's effective. That's my long spiel. Sorry,
No, it kind
but-
Ms. Reynolds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was next.
Okay.
Ms. Reynolds.
I was not gonna say that much, but
Yeah.
basically the same thing about, is the last paragraph required to be by statute to be in our policy, or can we cut the last paragraph? Because going into a school, a lot of times it's something that the principal can fix, or someone on campus can fix, does it really need to go to the superintendent? But you also don't want it to say, it needs to be taken to the principal, because it may be an issue that it can't be fixed, and we need to take it to the superintendent to be able to get it fixed. So I don't know that saying who it needs to go to is helpful. I think just, the 7 of us should each be able to
Use your discretion.
determine that based on any given situation.
So the first paragraph is statute, and the second paragraph is in line with our current board bylaw and board staff communication.
So we can cut the second paragraph if the rest of the board agrees.
We can do anything we want.
You can, but it's still gonna say that in the board bylaw.
which gets back to the point I'm making, that we need to kind of sit down and think through what this looks like, hopefully. Because, we're gonna be a chattier board, I think.
The caution that I would offer, of course, is that you run the risk, we use the language here, suggestions and feedback, but at some point that starts to look like direction to the person who is receiving it. And we have to be careful about where that line is.
Well, can I mention, just going back and talking to board members from 20 years and current, not current here, but, of past few years, they've always done that. It's been a practice, but I'm about making good policy, because we could all be gone tomorrow, and I want it to read well, so we're gonna have to address the bylaw itself.
Right.
I wanna make good policy, because if I'm talking to people that said, of course I called people if I had an issue with transportation, if it was no big deal, situational stuff has always been this weird misunderstanding, but we do need to create good policy, which is almost separate than this subject right here.
Right.
This subject is, if you go into a school, if it's a safety hazard, we could if there's something that needs to be reported, of course, but it's not gonna be the first. We'll never build relationships with our schools if we continue with that.
It's reflective of an approach to governance of the relationship with the board and staff that I think can be improved. And I'd like for us all to try to work through that. I'm just one board member, but
Mr. Wilson.
I think Mrs. Fields.
Ms. Fields and Mr. Wilson.
I think it's an approach that one uses, and lots of times when I'm at schools and visiting, I would say something like, "How can I help you to be more effective?" or "What can I do to help beyond being here today?" And the principal might say, we've had a maintenance request in for a while. Is it possible for you to maybe help with that? And then I just say sure, and then I write it down and take it back to the superintendent, and then she makes sure that it's done. So I think it just depends on the perception of it, and making sure that it's not like we're there trying to take charge of their school, that they are in assignment. It's not their school, but in assignment, if that makes any sense, and maybe it doesn't.
Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Cunningham.
So I think what I'm hearing from the board members is that they feel like they should have the discretion as to who it goes to, but I think we as a board need to provide some sort of direction to Mrs. Dodge. Are you clear about what's being asked, or do you still have some
There seems
questions?
to be consensus about removing the second paragraph, from what I can tell.
Okay.
Can that be removed? Wes, can that be removed?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
it's by law?
It can. The purpose of policy is not to have a direct lift from statute, but to implement statutes. I think the second paragraph was consistent with, as has been pointed out, current policy and practice, but there's no statutory requirement that you have that language in your policy. There are constitutional and statutory provisions having to do with the roles of school boards and superintendents and the direction of staff. And if we run into a logjam on that, we can address it when we get there.
Ms. Cunningham.
Well, I was gonna echo similar to Ms. Fields. I never go into a school and tell them what to do or how to do it or make suggestions or anything. I walk in with the servant leadership to say, hi, I'm here, I'm excited. I wanna see some of the kids, what are we doing good? Are there areas that, once again, you might need some help with? Is there something in particular that, I could offer my assistance in? And I do the same thing. I take notes, I type them up, and typically meet with superintendent and say, here's some things that I've heard. Is that something that we're doing countywide or my district or this school? And sometimes, a lot of times with me and with parents, a lot of it's hearsay too. So you kind of have to, but yeah, I would never walk in and say, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, that brick needs to be roofed, come on and call down here. I don't see that as our role, and you're right, if you did walk in that way, I think people would, you're trying to develop those relationships, and I think that is first and foremost, that they trust you, that you're there to be a part of it, and you're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And then certainly it's a fine line, because if you do come back and, you know, you make a suggestion, you know, everybody's laying blame. I'm not here to lay blame. I want to take care of the kids. What can we do to help the school with the children in this situation? And then the next thing, the most important thing to me is the follow through, you know, letting them know what you found out, what did superintendent or whomever say, or Mr. Davis or whoever, because a lot of times superintendent's crazy busy and I get directed, you know, to whomever, which is fine, that's the whole point. But at least if she's out there, she doesn't get caught off guard because they feel like they've talked to me and now, so that way she knows what's going on, what's been communicated to myself. And so I think that helps with credibility for everybody in the district. So that's how I've kind of done it and tried to be helpful and not hurtful, if that's the right word, you know, so.
Ms. Rose?
I think, to your point, that's basically what Lisa was saying, is that this is what everybody tends to do, is if there's, you know, if you see something on Winter Haven High School campus, I'm gonna tell Miss Williams, this is what I saw when I got here, I just wanna make you aware. I'm not gonna take it to the superintendent and then have her go and talk to the principal, but, you know, I think we all tend to, if we see something that's going on, say something to the principal and just let them know what we've seen and let them handle it, not take it to the superintendent.
Right.
I think that's always been our practice, is
Yes.
to, if there's something there and
Yes.
you can help, to help.
Yes.
Not to have to take everything to the superintendent. The way that this reads, it sounds like you can't say anything to the principal, you have to take it directly to the superintendent. And I don't think we want a policy that 2 years from now, if we have 3 new board members, they're all gonna read it as, I have to take everything to the superintendent, I can't do anything today, I can't talk to my principals type thing. I think we see the same thing in the legislature a lot, where they make a policy thinking it's gonna do one thing and then it reads something different, so it gets implemented totally different. So I think you're all three actually saying the same things.
Well, the first word is following, not during. So following the visit to the school, if you have suggestions or feedback regarding that visit, then what Ms. Fields and Ms. Cunningham are saying is absolutely correct, then you would send that to the appropriate place, but it doesn't say during.
I just wanna make sure that we write good
I understand what you're
policy.
saying, but what I'm saying is this says following a visit.
Right, but our perception is everything, and then before I was a board member, I was a board member elect. When a policy got sent out to staff, and depending on what school it went to, or a bylaw sent out to staff, the perception was very different. We had principals printing it out and handing it to staff and saying, this says you will not speak to board members. And that was not how that policy should have been presented to them. So perception is where we need to make sure our policies are very clear and protecting professionals. We're all elected officials and can act in a professional manner and need to be given that consideration, that we will not go in to create, you know, problems.
But if I could just finish real quick, because I wasn't quite finished.
Sorry.
May have suggestions and feedback, and this goes right back to the site thing about who we're gonna call. You know, there has to be that policy, I agree with you 110% on that. But this particular one does say following, and how it rolls out is very important. Trust me, I've had those emails.
So we're running a little behind schedule. Here's what I'm hearing. Clearly, the first paragraph needs to be in there. That's state law. What I'm hearing is we want to remove the second paragraph, and I think we have a consensus on that. And there may be some additional policy changes that we want to go back and address as well, but we'll need to address those at some later date, I think. Are we clear with Ms. Dodge about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would love this to, there's a larger issue of interaction of board and staff productively, not giving direction to, understanding how things work. I mean, you can just as easily take out the word visit to a school and say following a conversation with a staff member. Like that, they're exactly the same thing. I mean, it's most of what I do is talk to people, and you know, I think how we talk to people is what I'd like us to visit. And how we get information. We don't have to do that today.
Yeah.
But I wanted to strike that and then move forward in what the relationship is going to be, because I think we can improve it for everybody. I think we're driving Joanne crazy. And you know, I think there are better ways to do this that aren't threatening to anybody, and that's what I'd like to explore.
And I think leadership is a style, and certain styles are going to ignore policy in any case, right? So, I think that's why we need to have those conversations. I agree with you.
Are there any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Dodge.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I'm not turning over. There are no questions on the informational items that are before you, 11, 12, and 13. I am now turning the meeting over to you.
Okay. And just as you do that, my computer locks up.
Yeah, mine did too.
Let me get back to the screen. So the next item we want to take care of is a review of the agenda for this evening's board meeting. Do we have, do you have a paper version? Thank you. My computer's locked up. Okay. So, we have Haley Burrows, North Lakeland Elementary will be doing her will be leading some pledge. We have some special recognitions. We have 4 sets of minutes to approve. Any questions or comments about the minutes? Anybody have any questions or comments about the minutes? Items C10 through C13. Questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Could somebody, and I know time is of the essence, but I reviewed the stop-loss insurance. And I really don't get what we're doing. I don't know if the others have had a chance or someone can explain to me. I mean, I even reviewed the 16, 17, and 18, and I see what's highlighted. But the question is, would that be based on the fact that we had the number of claims that were the number of dollars that drove us to this decision? Because that's kind of what it's showing at the bottom line.
Yeah, so
Help
we
me.
had a review committee in scoring, and we looked at it. You don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right,
So you
understand.
look back and
Sure.
we plugged in what happened in the past and what would be the best. This year we are adding a prescription. We didn't have that in the past, but Jan Bush from Robinson Bush is suggesting that we look at that, and we did, because a lot of her clients are, it's becoming, as you know, very costly in medication. But yes, that is how we evaluate it. Look back and plugged in, if this was last year and
16,
and what would
17, and
happen.
18. So, question, so the change is just to add the prescription piece? Is that what?
Yeah, because we did the medical and we had
Right.
the stop loss, but we asked them to give 2 prices, with it and without it. And when we looked at it and we talked about what's happened in the past again,
Yeah.
and we're heading there, and we feel we're going to have some more high cost
Claim.
on the medical, on the
Okay.
prescription.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. That was my only question.
Okay?
Mr. Wilson,
Yes, ma'am.
did I already miss my chance on the,
Nope, absolutely not.
I think it's C63.
Oh, so we're not quite there yet.
Okay, never mind.
We'll get there in a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions about any of the donations, cash donations or non-cash donations, items C15 through C50? Questions about any of the countries? We're very fortunate, as I always say, to have the support of our communities. We always appreciate so much their contributions, both cash and non-cash. Items C51 through C55. Yes, ma'am.
The ones at East Side, Ms. Usher, are those two being tabled because we're gonna be doing a major renovation
That
at the
is
school?
correct. Right, we will increase the project.
That's what it said, it just, all right,
Right, that's why we.
thank you.
Okay, item C54 through C62. Questions, comments? At C63, you'd like that poll to put on the regular agenda?
Well, I just wanted to, again, I'm being inundated with emails, maybe this is like the newbie on the block, but, can I say her name? Jennifer Futch, has sent a lengthy email, I guess her leave of absence, I read in the, actual board minutes,
Charter school.
Here.
Yeah.
That's a charter school.
Yeah.
Over which we have no
Right, but the latest one was, that she has applied back in this district.
We've had several before we can give you a history.
Another, thank you.
Which number be busy, Ms. Burke?
What was the answer to that?
Yeah, what's
We've had that one before, we've had been dealing with for about the past, 4 or 5 months?
Yes.
Because I've even talked to, one of the board members of the McKeel charter, but we've been going through this, it keeps coming back, the same issue.
But I think the issue right now is that she said that she wanted, to be considered and not have the request for, leave of, absence.
We can brief you on it, it's come before us before.
I remember.
And I don't think that's,
Can you repeat that, Ms. Fields, I'm sorry, that she what, wanted or didn't want?
It said, the email, if I remember correctly, said that she did not want, she wants to get back employed with the school district.
That's what okay.
okay. And that, I don't think that directly relates to this particular item, which is fine. It's perfectly legitimate to bring up. But I think we're going to get with the superintendent on that and talk about it. Okay. So we will leave that on the consent agenda then. Item C64 through C72. Questions, comments? Okay, comments? All right. Items R73 through R76. I noticed that we did have one item, so item 76, that was removed from the consent agenda and moved over to the regular agenda.
That was, now that I'm looking on the other computer because mine is not working. I talked to Dr. Steinke about that. We have not in the past, if everybody's looking at this, it's referring to using a service company and not employing psychologists. In the past, we've employed them. At this point, they're saying that we are not able to fulfill the need with who we can employ at the time. So that money is being spent to use this organization to employ 5, I think if it's opened and you can see that, 5 psychologists. Or is there not a number on how many? But it will help alleviate, the wait time on our evaluations. And so that's what I needed clarification on, because in the past, we've not contracted those services out. You know, we've played with who pays for them, you know, local funds, IDEA, we pulled them. That's gone back and forth in the past, but this is the first time we're using educational-based services. But I've gotten those answers, so I'm not opposed to being back in the consent agenda if that's possible. Or once I've pulled it, do we need to vote?
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Okay. And the other one right under that was about SLPs. and because mine is not working,
That's
the Beth Ingram. Yeah, that was the other ones I had questions on, just for the fact that we cannot employ enough SLPs, and the reason we're changing the rates or the total and the contract amount is because they themselves don't have that many to service. I was questioning where that's coming from, but it's been explained. Really, the message is we are in desperate need of support services in this county, and having to pay outside management companies to bring them in is probably costing us more dollars, but we do not have, or we feel we are not able to attract them in to work for us.
Okay. So we're now, that's item C14. I see item C14 through item R83. So I know Ms. Miller's addressed a couple of those. Are there any other questions or concerns? Item R81. It looks like we're giving a permanent easement to the Southwest Florida Management District. No?
It's not a permanent easement. The Water Management District asked us for an access easement and a construction easement and an easement for their well.
Okay.
They're putting a well close to a property, the school, Eagle Lake. It's not permanent because if they cease to manage the well and the well does not exist there any longer, then it comes back to us. But, I mean, for the life of the well, it will be theirs.
Okay. So I'm wondering if for whatever reason we ever decided we didn't want that property anymore, would that create some challenges for us in disposing of it?
Well, if we have a, go ahead, Wes.
It is certainly something that would be recorded and would show up if we were trying to dispose of the property.
Yeah.
It would have to be alienated subject to the existing easement. That said, it's a relatively unintrusive process. We have them on several of our properties. From time to time, the agencies with the cognizant agencies for this sort of thing put in monitoring wells just to keep an eye on the quality of this is groundwater, this is water level. So it's not particularly invasive, but you're right. It would appear in the chain of title if we were attempting to alienate the property.
Okay. And the only other item I have, I am going to ask to, I'm moving the policy updates to the first item on the regular agenda, just so that Mrs. Dodge can leave a little earlier. I'm going to ask Mrs. Dodge to come forward and give an overview of the policy updates, and then we'll ask for public input, and that will allow her to leave for Tallahassee a little bit earlier. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I had one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
On the policies, and I had, read the bullying and harassing, and the only thing that I would, recommend is that there be a link or something in this area for parents and students to know how to, submit a complaint. There's nothing in here that talks about that.
So you said on our website?
No, in the policy, there's nothing here that references it, and I've been getting quite a few calls lately, and when I talk to the parents, they say they are aware that they can go to the website and file a complaint, and there's nothing in here that tells them that in case they wanted to look at this policy.
I'll get her to add that, because that's been out there for a while.
Okay.
Okay.
I know it has, but I'm just saying a lot of people are not aware of it.
And but with the website reconstruction, is it, where is it, do you know where it's located? Because it used to be, you could find it easier.
Schoolsfl.com/bullying, and there's a green button that says report bullying.
So we have to link them /bullying, okay.
Do you know?
There's also in the parents menu, there's bullying, the drop down menu takes you to the same place.
Maybe she can say this, she's going to
Maybe on the school website.
Wendy, do you want to come forward about putting it in the policy, the bullying policy, about it being listed on the website, and
Yes.
they can go there?
Yes, we will put a hyperlink to the heading where it talks about reporting bullying, and it'll go right to the button that
Rachel has out there.
Rachel was talking about. It'll take you to the same place that button takes you to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about this evening's agenda? So the next item, before we get to the new business, we had discussed at the last school board meeting, having, yes ma'am?
Sorry, I have one more thing
Sure.
on the agenda. We got an email November 16th about an appointment for community liaison, Steve Warner for the Winter Haven area, that he was supposed to be coming forward tonight, and it is not listed under new administrators. But I know he's going to
He's
be
on the
here
way, I'm checking
tonight.
on that. I think there was some communication failure between our office and
So that will be added,
between our
Mr. Chair.
office.
Okay, so we will have
So
new
we'll be on, we'll have
administrators.
one new administrator, his name is Dr. Stephen Warner. I'll provide that information to all of you, so you all can see that.
Okay, it is
Thank you.
highly probable that I will forget that, so Mrs. Cunningham, will you remind me?
And Lynn, that
Yes,
is the position that for the Winter Haven areas liaison, so after I would like to just make comment about it, and, because I know we have a couple of PEP board members that
After-
are gonna come, just after he's introduced.
After he's
After he
introduced.
speaks.
Okay.
Just
Yep.
giving you a heads
Just,
up.
okay, just turn your light on.
Yeah.
All right, so at the last board meeting, Mr. Townsend asked that we have some additional meetings, and with the intent of having additional conversations about issues of concern. And I think that, from my perspective, there were a couple of questions I had. One of them was, one of the things we could do to accommodate that request is to add that to the work session on the days we don't have board meetings. But I think Ms. Forty indicated that she wanted it in the evenings so that we could accommodate people who might want to come and talk to us. So, am I correct in understanding that? Okay.
Absolutely.
So, where would you like us to go with that?
Well, I mean, I was specifically aiming for off hours, so that it could be a more casual setting. So whether that's evenings, I mean, my original suggestion was Sunday afternoon, which I get some people don't want to do, but I would go, certainly. I think we had some difficulty finding a date, but I think maybe beginning of January. I think Susan thought she had one. What are you asking me?
Well, I'm just trying to get some clarification on what we want to do and where the board, and some consensus from the board on that. If we did it in the evenings, would it be possible for us to do it here and record that? Is that a possibility?
It certainly is. The legal requirements for it are gonna be that it's noticed, that it's open to the public, and I've also dug a little digging. It is, I don't believe it's sufficient to record it. I do believe there'll have to be minutes.
Minutes, okay.
I did a little digging. It didn't come from school board. It actually came from a municipality that was taken to task because they simply recorded the meeting instead of doing minutes.
Okay.
So I think it would be, those are the minimum things that would be required. I would also suggest that there be a nominal agenda, even if it is as simple as saying, roundtable discussion with school board members for current events in education.
Okay, so, Madam Superintendent, that would entail having some staff available after hours.
So that will, Secretary of Staff.
Somebody who could take some minutes, I suppose. Do we still need to record it and take the minutes, or just take the
There's no
minutes?
legal requirement to record
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
The requirement is that you have minutes. I think it's common that people record it and do minutes as well, and they use them to cross-reference each other and whatnot.
Couldn't we record it and have somebody do the minutes based on the recording?
I think it needs to be counted.
I would suggest, if it's important enough to have a roundtable meeting, it's important enough to have somebody present to do the minutes. Rather, I would strongly advise being safe instead of sorry on that.
Could one of us do the minutes instead of requesting?
I think it would be better to have someone who's designated to do that, yes, ma'am.
I
Would
think
this
so
be
too.
considered a formal meeting? This is a formal meeting.
Well,
If you know.
you can, a work session is, when we use the term formal meeting, a work session is a formal
I know.
meeting. There's no action taken by the board. But if there is a meeting of the board, formal, informal, indoors, outdoors, it has to be noticed, there have to be minutes, it has to be open to the public.
Okay, so we'll give this a try and see how it goes. Mrs. Worthington, you'll see if you can get a date set up first of January sometime, and we'll plan on, I guess, meeting here. We'll have to find someone to keep the minutes. And our agenda will simply be a roundtable discussion.
Right.
What time are we looking at these?
6 o'clock?
Like 6 to 8, something like that.
6 to 8.
So we're looking at being in this room or the auditorium?
I think we can do it here.
Whichever is easier.
Yeah.
Here, this would be probably more facilitative.
Okay. All right.
It's closer to an actual round table.
Yes, it is.
We could also move,
We can have a
you know,
horseshoe table discussion.
if it goes well, we could move them around. We could go elsewhere and have people, if people just take notes.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is, I think, the committee assignments. Get through those as quickly as possible. In some instances, I have board members who identified a certain committee as their number one choice, and there was no one else who wanted that as a choice. That was easy. In some instances, we have folks who indicated a particular committee as their number one choice, and we've had that for consecutive years. So what I did there was, if I assigned it to a particular committee board member last year, then I gave that assignment to the other board member this year, so that everyone would have a chance to serve where they would like to serve. The Claims Committee, and I understand that that has changed somewhat, so there may not be a need for the board chair to visit those, but if there is, then I'm certainly available. Polk Education Foundation, that rotates every year, and this is now rotating to seat number 2, so Mrs. Cunningham will serve on the PEF. Audit and Finance Committee, Mrs. Miller, would you take that assignment, please?
Sure.
Polk County Head Start, Mrs. Fields. Polk Vision Education Committee, Ms. Reynolds. Sales Tax Oversight Committee, Mr. Townsend. And Central Florida School Boards Coalition, Ms. Fortney. Now, I understand, apparently I don't have the authority to appoint you to the calendar committee, so I'll have to leave that up to the secretary. So those are committee assignments. Any questions about the committee assignments?
Yeah, I do. It's on the Polk Vision, because I'm on 2 Polk Vision committees that are attendance and literacy. Are those yours now? I mean, does that put you on them, or?
I don't think so. I think you've been asked to serve on those independent of these assignments.
Oh, I'm the executive, the directors.
No.
No.
Who?
The one that you're going to, is the
I'm
one?
No,
going to.
Okay, so you're going to executive.
Yeah, because I serve on some of their committees too, but I've been asked to do that independent of these assignments.
Okay.
What is Ms. Reynolds?
She's on the Polk Vision Education Committee.
Well,
Education.
that's the education committee, and then there's also the board of directors.
The board of directors, but we're gonna get to that in a moment.
Gotcha, okay. Because you were on the education committee before, and then the sub.
I don't think I was.
Oh, okay.
I think I've only been on these 2 specific
Subcommittees.
committees, which I guess,
So
I mean,
we didn't-
anybody can come to them, so by all means come.
We didn't have, well, that could be a sunshine violation,
Oh, that's right.
so we don't want that to happen. So I don't know, is there a Polk Vision Education Committee? That's the one I've
There
been.
is, but I
okay.
think each of their overarching committees have subcommittees.
Okay.
So, I believe. That's good, okay.
But I mean, I was appointed to these, I think, as part of the committee assignments last year. So
Okay.
we just need to figure out if there's overlap there. Okay.
I'm talking about the Polk Vision Education Committee. What Mr. Townsend's saying is there are some subcommittees there.
There are subcommittees.
So apparently then, what I'm hearing is that Ms. Reynolds would take those over. But you can check with Polk Vision on those.
Yeah, I'll just call Kim and see if being on those 2 committees means that I'm on the education committee. I don't know. But I'll see.
Okay. So then we have some elected positions. We'll start with, and this is going to get a little bit complicated, but we'll start with the Value Adjustment Board. I am happy to submit my name as a nominee for that board. However, if someone else would like to submit their name as a nominee, I will happily take my name out of contention. So at this evening's meeting, if nobody else is interested, I'll submit my name as nominee, and then we'll have a vote to affirm these positions. We have Florida School Boards Association. We have 2 positions here. We have the Legislative Committee. Currently, Ms. Reynolds, you're.
I thought those were appointed in June.
They are.
Okay.
They are. So currently, Ms. Reynolds is our representative. Mr. Townsend is our alternate. Those are not elected, well, those positions run through June. So you are still in those positions through June. On the Florida School Boards Association Board of Directors, this was Mrs. Sellers, since she is no longer on the board. Mrs. Cunningham now has moved into that role, so she's now our representative. We do, however, need to elect an alternate. And Ms. Reynolds has submitted her name as a nominee as an alternate for the Florida School Board's Board of Directors through June. This is only through June.
Right.
This is replaced because of Mrs. Sellers.
Oh, right. Well, I thought it was you.
She was the alternate.
I was the
She's
alternate.
now moved up into the.
Oh, okay.
And we need to replace Mrs. Cunningham.
And you want to do it?
They're normally the same day as the legislative meeting, so I'm there anyways if you
Okay.
need to stay.
And now these are elected positions, so if anyone else is interested, please submit your name. Now, what we can do, and I'm going to ask for consensus of the board, if you like, we can elect the officers to take seats the 1st of July, or we can wait until June to do that, whatever you prefer to do for these positions, in addition to, we want to wait till June to do that? Or do that? Okay.
Who knows what'll happen?
Okay. So in the last elected position is the Polk Vision Board of Directors. Both Mrs. Fields and myself have indicated an interest in doing that. So at this evening's meeting, Mrs. Cunningham, I'll turn the gavel over to you to let you.
Mr. Wilson, if you would like to do that, you don't have to do that. You can have it.
Are you sure?
Sure.
Okay. I would be interested in serving in that position.
Mr. Chair, how often does the Value Adjustment Board need, I may try to take that off your hands.
Quarterly. Quarterly.
Okay, I will run against you hard on just to try to be nice.
And
You
Mr.
know what, that's
Chair,
gonna be easy.
do we need an alternate for the Value Adjustment Board?
We do, yes, thank you.
We did?
So I'm happy to submit my name as alternate. It meets quarterly, and honestly,
Yeah.
generally, the
It's-
meetings are less than half an hour.
Oh, okay.
You just have to go down to the Board of County Commissioners and
And read your
No good deed goes unpunished.
And new board members who are being assigned to committees they have not served on before will get some kind of notice of where and when and what's
Oh, yes,
expected.
absolutely,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
Or a reprimand if you don't show up at the right place in time?
Okay, okay.
Okay. Strategic planning, so the strategic planning retreat, we need to set a date for that very quickly. Can we push the discipline meeting back a few more minutes, Madam Superintendent? Because we need a few more minutes here, I think. So we need to set some dates for the strategic planning retreat. We have some proposed dates, March 5th, 12th, 14th, or 21st. Is there, what's the pleasure of the board?
What is the actual day that the 21st is?
Thursday.
That may be the only one that's bad for me. I don't want to.
Me too.
So.
I'll be out of town.
So
We're
we can't
right
do-
close to break, I
I can do 5, 12.
Yeah, the 5th would be the best for me.
5th
Yep.
is a Tuesday?
Yep.
Okay, how about the 5th? Does the 5th work for everybody?
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the 5th,
Wait a minute.
still looking?
Yeah, I was in the wrong month. Yeah, it's great.
Okay. Anybody else have any concerns with the 5th? Okay, we will set it for the 5th. Would you,
It's only one day?
yes,
Oh,
would you inform Dr. Freya, please? And then lastly, we have board comments. This time I open the floor to board comments.
I think you did first.
I just wanted to make sure our new board members knew that we were part of the Central Florida Public School Board Coalition. So when, like, FSBA, they have a breakfast that you're invited to, I didn't ring to let you know that you were invited to it beforehand, so I'm really, really sorry. Wendy and I had a great time. I'm sorry you missed it. But so anytime at FSBA, they normally try and make their meeting for that month the same as FSBA, and it's just like a 7:30 breakfast. So I know Sarah will get to serve on that committee now. Congratulations.
Okay. That's
So
once a
I'll
month?
fill you in, it's once a month.
Yeah, I saw.
And I just made sure that you both were added to the email list too, so.
But they don't actually meet, do they?
They only meet during the school year, and if there's a hurricane in that month, they don't typically meet, so that's like 2 months out of the fall.
And where is
So-
it usually, Orlando?
It is in Orlando, and Dr. Aikes goes with you. It's a great time.
You don't need to happy. Leave early.
You'll need to leave early.
That's any other comments, Ms.
I just
Miller?
wanted to define this, open agenda, or open roundtable meetings, we're trialing, and then at that time, we can, determine if that's gonna be something we do long-term.
Yes, ma'am.
And can we invite people? That would be my other question.
Absolutely.
Let's open
That's
I think that would be
that's what we're
one of the ultimate
shooting
goals
at,
of it,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Superintendent Byrd, do we have the Fortify app?
Yes, we have that.
I thought so.
Is it
Somebody asked me and I wanted to clarify.
Security,
Security?
45 Florida.
Fortified,
Four.
Florida is, we talked about it as cabinet,
Yeah,
working
it's
with
the one.
Rachel
That's,
to,
Is that a yes?
that's state
get
schools.
the app
On the
online
website, we have it.
and
Yeah.
Crime Stoppers as well.
Mhm.
And,
Any other questions, comments?
I have some other ideas.
Three, 4, 45.
Okay. So very quickly, for our new colleagues on the board, at the end of every meeting, we solicit input from the public. Just be aware that sometimes those comments can be biting. Our board policy indicates that we will not respond to comments from the public. I know sometimes it seems like it's important to clarify or share our perception so that folks understand what's happening, but I think more often than not, that comes off as being, divisive and condescending sometimes and a little rude. So it's their opportunity to tell us how they feel, and we want to make sure they understand that we're listening to them, so.
So you don't respond, the chair
We do not-
responds,
No,
right?
I don't respond.
Oh, okay.
Only to direct them to staff.
Exactly.
Okay.
If it's something that I or another board member feels like we can address by directing them to staff or directing them to the superintendent, we'll do that, but that's pretty much it.
Do you give them that up front? I mean, does the public know that, or they just look at us waiting to respond? And not respond?
What I will do is I will ask the public when they make the comments to direct the comments to me,
Okay.
directly to me. And then, if it's necessary, we'll ask staff to visit with them.
Okay.
Well, having been on that end, it would have been nice to know.
It looks like you're just being,
It's-
it looks like
well,
everyone's just staring at you with no
But
response.
Correct.
But it's
Right.
new, newish, we didn't really, this was not enforced before, say, June. So it's, people, that's another thing to talk about,
And-
down
and
the line.
absolutely, I agree, that's something we can talk about, but for now.
For
it's-
now, yeah,
I-
that's right. Sorry.
And my take on it is very simple. As well-intended as it might seem, I think to the person that's hearing it, it could be misperceived. So, thank you for that input. I will do my best to let folks know that we will not be responding to their comments. I think I've done that in the
I
past.
think you
That's
did
your
the
job
very
all the
first
time.
board meeting, like July board meeting,
Yeah.
but I don't.
Okay,
We need-
so we have a discipline meeting in 10 minutes, 4:45.